What's up, everyone? It's Will and D here, and I'm here with my buddy Jeffrey, and we're going to talk some college football. We had another pretty fun week of games, and next week should be fun too.
Yeah, I can't wait. Week 5 had a lot of good games. I'm sure week 6 will as well. It doesn't seem like outside of a couple of matchups that there's not like plenty of big matchups, but there's some good games still. Cannot wait to talk about them and appreciate you having me on, Will.
Yeah, all right. I'm going to share the screen here, and we're going to check out the games from the past week. And the first one, of course, that we have to talk about is Oregon State, the Beavs, defending their home dam and taking on the Utes, whose offense wasn't very good, but the Beavers were able to take advantage of it. DJ made some good plays. He did have a bad pick, but overall, it was just a good night for Oregon State football.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to show two things for Utah. Number one, they need Cam Rising back. And number two, Utah's not a very good road team. That's just the way that they are. At home, Utah at Rice Eccles, they're almost unbeatable. But when they go on the road, it's a completely different situation. You even saw last year when they had Cam Rising, they dropped a couple road games. They just do not look like themselves on the road, especially without him. They had no chance. I picked Oregon State for that reason because I'm like, they're on the road. That's a tough environment at Reser Stadium. No Cam Rising. Nate Johnson and Bryson Barnes tried, but they just were not given any time to throw, and they were making mistakes all over the place. DJ didn't play perfect, but he did enough. And all around, Oregon State just showed on offense and defense a lot of heart, and they wanted to come out there and play really hard after that loss to Washington State, and they did that. Utah just didn't have a chance.
Yeah, it's crazy. This is their first top 10 win since taking down Mark Sanchez's USC Trojans. So just a very historic night in Oregon State. Do you think they could push on, maybe challenge the Washingtons and the Oregons this year, or do you think this is as far as they can go in terms of winning a big game?
I mean, it's possible in the right situation, in the right scenario. I mean, they're not a bad team at all. I mean, they're really, really good. It's just the talent. It was like, is their talent on the level with those other teams? I don't know. I mean, they've never really been as talented ever because they just don't recruit as well. But to be fair, Jonathan Smith has brought in a lot of guys that are, those underrated recruits, those diamond in the rough players, and they've been recruiting a little bit better. They have a shot to knock off a big team. It's not impossible. I mean, they beat Oregon last year, in the Civil War. So, they could win against Oregon again, possibly, even though it's, going to be in Autzen, and possibly against Washington. You just never know. But, I mean, I think Oregon State showed in the last 2 games that they have a lot of upside to them, but they also have moments where they struggle. DJ is going to have to play better if they are going to knock off a team of that caliber. And if Utah is going to get back in the picture, again, they need Rising back. That's just all you can say.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Cam Rising can take them back to the Pac-12 title game. Going to look tough this year, but we'll see if Andy Ludwig can turn this offense from a lump of coal into gold. Yeah, I forgot something. And our buddy Austin, very happy with this game. A little stressful, but the Cardinals did win in a walk. They walked off Carter Finley at night, very in a hostile environment with the Steelers coach, I can't think of his name, was there. The old Steelers coach.
Cower.
Yes, Bill Cower. He was there cheering on his Wolfpack. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough as Brendan Armstrong is not the same guy that he was in 2021. He had a great season, just hasn't been able to recapture the glory with Robert and I. But the Cardinals still going undefeated, and hey, they're ranked now, taking on my Irish. So what do you think about Louisville?
I mean, this game all around, I was expecting more offense out of Louisville because Thrash, Jordan, and Plummer, I mean, that's a pretty good tandem on offense. And, Plummer, I've never really thought of Plummer as a top-level quarterback in college football, but he can get the job done with the right pieces. And again, if you look at Thrash, the receiver position and Jordan on the ground, they've got some offensive weapons, but they were not getting anything going on offense in this game. And granted, NC State played hard. They played hard on defense, but I was a bit shocked, to be honest, that Maryland was not ranked instead of Louisville. Now, I'm not saying that Louisville doesn't deserve to be ranked because Louisville's 25th, Maryland's the first team out, and they're only separated by a couple votes. But Maryland's dominated, for the most part, every opponent they played, whereas Louisville has escaped. Like I told Mark a few days ago, Louisville could be 2-3. They were one play away in the Georgia Tech game. If Haynes King does not fumble in that game, late in the fourth quarter, there's a shot Georgia Tech wins that game. Indiana was at the goal line. Indiana's been horrible on offense this season, but against Louisville, they were at the goal line with a chance to tie, go to overtime, and Indiana's won like their last 6 overtime games. So you never know if Indiana would have had a shot there. And then against NC State, they win by 3 on the road. NC State had a million chances, and Brennan Armstrong has regressed, not as badly as Phil Dracovic at Pitt, but Brennan Armstrong has still regressed from where he was at Virginia. So again, Louisville's a good team, but if they're going to be able to beat the Notre Dames and the Kentuckys and the Miamis that they have coming up on their schedule, Notre Dame just coming up this week, we'll talk about it tonight, Louisville's going to have to play better on offense because they're a good team, and I'm not saying they don't deserve to be ranked. They're 5-0, and they have beat some decent opponents, but they've barely won. Maryland's blown out teams. They haven't played as tough of a schedule, but that's an interesting dynamic there. Maryland, you would think, will lose to Ohio State, but we'll get to that. But it's just interesting all around. I think Louisville's a solid team, but they were not super impressive in this game, but a win's a win.
Mm-hmm. And just a little cheers for the chat, as my friend Pigskin Pete says. We got a whole squad on here. We have Buckeye Mike, Jackson, John, Joey popped in, Jim Himes, Casey Mallory, Erica in Jackson. So thanks everyone for being here. And what do you think about MJ Morris coming in as a new quarterback? He looked pretty good last year, and I believe he got hurt as well as Devin Leary did. Do you think that NC State can make a push for at least get into a bowl game this season? I mean, obviously, it's already kind of a disappointing season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, MJ Morris, like you said, he played, if I recall, in the North Carolina game last year, and he was pretty solid. I don't know. I mean, they're not a bad team. Their defense is capable. Like, they shut Louisville down to 13 points, but they just need some offense. And I thought Brennan Armstrong was going to be a lot better than he was last year at Virginia. But again, he hasn't been the guy. As long as MJ Morris can just put more production out there than Brennan Armstrong, 6 wins is obtainable. Because the ACC, even though it's improved from top to bottom, as a lot of people have mentioned, there's still some bad teams. So I think it's possible for NC State to still make a bowl game.
Mm-hmm. And good news for NC State is that West Virginia is winning. So Tony Gibson, their defensive coordinator, kind of like their Phil Parker, he's going to be staying because it looks like Neil Brown's going to have a job. But we'll talk about that game in a bit. But definitely good news for NC State.
Mm-hmm.
And as we head to the Big 12, not sure we have how well these teams are going to do once they play other Big 12 teams. But BYU did beat Cincinnati in the battle of the new Big 12 teams, 35-27, in a bit of a shootout. So, what do you think?
BYU's decent. I mean, you look at how they beat Arkansas. That was a good win. They couldn't beat Kansas, but that was Kansas with Jalen Daniels, and it was on the road. Then they come back around, beat Cincinnati, who has been struggling. As you mentioned last week, they lost to Miami, Ohio. But I think BYU's decent. They can make a bowl game. Keaton Slovis, outside of a couple of really bad throws, has not played horrible football. And, that BYU's always had a pretty stout defense. They weren't great in this game, but they had their moments. Emory Jones is capable, but like Keaton Slovis, but on steroids, he has really bad throws, and a lot of them just out of nowhere. It's like, I don't know where you're throwing to. And a bad pick 6 in this game. I don't think Cincinnati's a horrible team. I just think that they got to clean up the mistakes so they can get some wins. But BYU's a tough place to play. I picked BYU. They got the job done. And, yeah, and an interesting stat from this game as well is that in the first half, Cincinnati had 50 plays run and BYU at 20 at the end of the first half. And BYU was winning. And Cincinnati had like 265 yards of offense, and BYU had like 100. So, yeah, it goes to show you that yards, if they don't end up in points, are useless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Emory Jones looks like the same guy at Florida. He is not progressed at all. Not really regressed, but still like has those flaws in him.
Yeah, if he could eliminate some mistakes, he'd be decent. He'd be solid.
Yeah, Keaton Slovis, I would say, looks a bit. I think he looks a bit better than he did at Pitt. Maybe it's because the competition in the Big 12 isn't as good as it was in the ACC, but I'm a little more impressed in Keaton Slovis than I thought I would be. Still has some mistakes, but overall, he looks solid.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's gonna have a shot in the NFL or anything like that, but I mean, he is improved from when he was at Pitt. And like you said, it's probably maybe just better players around him and probably easier schedule. To your point.
Mm-hmm. As I almost had a heart attack with this game, man. If we would have lost 2 heartbreakers in a row, I don't think I would have been able to control my emotions for being on the show today. But man, we pulled it off. I'll vent, but I want to hear you talk about the game first.
I mean, the thing for me is I picked Notre Dame against Ohio State. I believed in the Fighting Irish. I'm like, they've got the 6th-year quarterback or the 5th-year, the senior, the experience, whereas Ohio State had the young freshman quarterback out there. And I'm like, Notre Dame, maybe their talent isn't, as much as Ohio State. They don't have as much depth all around, but they still have talent. Notre Dame is a talented football team, and it was at home in South Bend. I'm like, they're going to win, and they lost. And then I'm like, I'm going to go with Notre Dame again. I'm not going to buy the Duke, hype that they're ready for this stage. I think Duke's good, but I'm not going to pick them to beat Notre Dame. I think the Fighting Irish are going to get it done. And they were up. Notre Dame's up 13-0. I'm like, not bad, and then they just kept stalling. I'm like, they're going to give Duke a shot to win if they don't score again. And then what's Riley Leonard do? Have 2 good drives, takes the lead. It's 14-13. And I'm like, oh, no. Here we go again. Notre Dame's going to lose the game. They're going to fall to 4-2 and then have Louisville on the road up next. Things are not looking good for the Fighting Irish. And then 4th and 16 happens. And Sam Hartman's looking down the field. I'm like, this is it. There's nowhere to throw. And then he just runs. There's no defense. He picks up the first down by the skin of his teeth. And then Audric Estime finishes off on the very next play. Notre Dame wins the game. And hopefully, to reiterate for Riley Leonard, that his high ankle sprain heals and that he'll be back soon so Duke's season can still be really good because they did play really hard in this game. A lot of credit and props to them. But Notre Dame was the more talented team, and they should have won this game by more. But as I always say, when things don't always go a team's way, but they still win, a win is a win. Notre Dame won. Mm-hmm. It's all that matters. But, man, they made it a lot closer than it needed to be.
Mm-hmm. I'll make this excuse for my Irish in this game. We had 3 of our 4 top wide receivers out, and we could not throw the ball. We just
That's
could not.
True. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Rico Flores, he's a freshman. He made some plays. He scored the 2-point conversion. But besides that, it looked like the good old Brian Kelly, Tommy Rees offense. Run the ball a couple of times, and then if you don't get a first down, just try to throw it up to your tight end to keep the drive going.
Yeah, and you look at Hartman, he threw for 222 yards, and 134 of those yards was to Mitchell Evans, the tight end.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like, it looked like we're talking Iowa football here. It's all tight end, no receivers. But like you said, the receivers were out, so it makes it understandable. But, yeah, they need to get those receivers healthy. They need more yards out of Hartman through the air. 300-plus yards, what should be the expectation for a guy of his caliber and his experience. And that's possibly what Notre Dame's going to need against Louisville, especially if Louisville's offense plays better.
Mm-hmm. And also, I said 3 of our 4 wide receivers were hurt. The one wide receiver that was healthy, he has the yips. He can't catch, man. He's dropping everything. Like Tobias Merriweather, man. It is torture. He's talented. Like, he was the highest ranked wide receiver recruit that Notre Dame has had since Michael Floyd in the class of 2009. And he just can't, and like he gets open, but he just cannot catch the ball. So.
Sometimes with wide receivers, it's like kickers. You miss a field goal and it's in your head and you just keep on missing them. Once you drop a ball or two, you saw Kadarius Toney in the NFL. At one game with the Chiefs, he just could not catch the ball at all in the entire game. He's starting to catch them now again, so he's off the hit list in the NFL. But you just gotta shake it off and Catch the ball, then turn up field. That's the biggest thing. It's always when you turn up field or you take your eyes off the ball. It's so easy, but yet so difficult sometimes. Just catch the ball. You got all the talent in the world. You can make the run after the catch after you catch the ball.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, really hoping that Jaden Thomas, Jaden Greathouse, and Deion Colsey, hopefully that at least two of them can get healthy for this game against Louisville. And yeah, it does sound like Iowa's wide receivers. And I'm hoping we can get at least to Michigan's wide receivers by the end of the year. And that's what I'm hoping. But we'll see what my Irish can do. And Virginia Tech and Pitt, the Hokies pulled it off, but Phil Dracovich's not great. Kyron Drones played pretty well for the Hokies. I watched this game because my sister goes to Tech. So my parents, aunts and uncles, they all rented a little Airbnb out in the mountains and the Blacksburg area. They had fun. So I'm happy for them that they got a win. But did you catch much of this game, Jeffrey?
I didn't really see much of it, to be honest. I mean, I try to flip through as many games as I possibly can, but sometimes it's kind of hard to catch them all. But I do think that, Pittsburgh's just showing that they're not good. I mean, it's unfortunate. Like, Pat Narduzzi usually can pull a rabbit out of his hat with a possibly below average team and can have success. And I mean, it's the ACC. So, I mean, are they completely out of the bowl picture? You never know. But Dracovic struggling. He threw for 235, and it wasn't enough because the defense for, the Panthers was not, slowing down Virginia Tech. They had a good game on the ground. And like you said, Drones, the new quarterback, seems to be doing a better job than Grant Wells. I mean, credit to Dracovic for not throwing a pick. I mean, you got to give him credit there. But again, when he plays a bit better, the offense, it's just not enough to be able to make up for their defensive performance, which was awful. So Virginia Tech, I don't think they're anything special, but maybe with Drones, they can start winning some games. But yeah, Pitt's struggling, even on defense.
Mm-hmm. And that's what their calling card usually. Like Pat Narduzzi, he had a good defense. His defenses helped Mark D'Antonio have a lot of his success at Michigan State. Like obviously they had Kirk Cousins and Connor Cook, and then Brian Hoyer before that, and they were all good. But
yeah, when you're not a great football team, you have to have good defense to win. I mean, that's how Iowa gets by with their offense. They defend and they win grinded out games. And Pitt's usually like that, even though their offense has been at times better than Iowa's. But you just don't see that this year. They're giving up a lot of points, and Virginia Tech is not a team you want to be giving up 38 to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, usually 3 picks. And
yeah, Phil Dracovic, ever since his freshman year at Boston College, that's basically has been what he's been. When he was at BC early on, he was great, throwing for 350, 400 yards and hanging against Clemson and everything. So he has talent, and he showed early in his career he can be really good. But yeah, he's really regressed, but at least he didn't play too bad in this game. Just wasn't enough for them to win.
Yeah, I mean, just crazy how hyped up Phil was. Like people were like, "Look, bench Ian Cook, Ian Book, let Phil Dracovic play." And man, it looked like that Notre Dame should have kept Phil as a starter in 2020, but I don't know. I don't know if it was the bad O-line or what, but this has not been the same.
He's gotten injured a lot, and I think that's been a part of the problem.
Yeah. And then Georgia surviving the Deep South's oldest rivalry, taking down Auburn 27-20. Carson Beck wasn't pretty the whole game, but at the end, when it mattered, he was able to perform and win I mean, Brock Bowers helps, but Georgia will remain number 1 for now.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, Carson Beck, he got the job done, but Brock Bowers is the reason. I mean, he had 121 of his yards in the fourth. Like one quarter, he had 121 yards. He's running all over the place. It just seemed like Auburn gave everything that they had, and then in the fourth quarter, they just couldn't stop him anymore. Because early on, they were. I mean, they were really pressuring Beck, and he made a mistake, had one pick, and Georgia just didn't look that good. I mean, overall, Georgia really hasn't played a game yet where you can say, oh, this is Georgia. They're just pounding their opponent. Like, even in the smaller games that they play, they just don't look as dominant on either side of the ball. And, they beat South Carolina, but that wasn't a dominant win. The same here. Yes, tough environment. Jordan Hare is a top 15 environment in college football, wherever you want to rank it on the list. It's a fantastic environment, but Georgia, if this was a few years ago, like 3 years ago, they probably win this game by more. Granted, last year they barely beat Missouri, but again, Georgia's just been kind of like that last couple of years. But it just feels like this year they're more vulnerable than ever. But they got the win. Like with Notre Dame, a win's a win. But Auburn gave it everything they had with literally no passing offense. I mean, Peyton Thorne was struggling through the air, and then they bring in Robbie Ashford, and he was just running all over the place. Like, when are they going to figure this out? They're like doing the same thing. And but yeah, Georgia clamped down enough at the end. But yeah, they were not dominant in this game at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. Yeah. So I don't know, man. Like, I still think that Georgia's going to go undefeated. I don't think they're that good of a team. I just think the SEC, especially the East, just isn't very strong this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty confident that they'll run through the schedule. And then I don't know, man. Bama's looking better. We'll talk about Bama, but they're looking better. That's the one game I think they might lose.
Yeah, Alabama's definitely last couple of weeks kind of seemed to got their offense figured out a bit. Can't wait to talk about them. But yeah, the East does look, a bit down overall, like from top to bottom. I mean, Missouri, we'll talk about them as well. I mean, they look a little better. Kentucky could be solid, but you don't have that Tennessee threat. They just don't look as good. So I don't know. The East isn't awful, but it just does look like Georgia should win all those games. But we'll see. Anything's possible.
Do you want to touch on the Michigan game for a quick sec?
The only thing I have to say about this game right here is that Nebraska has gotten even worse. Like, okay, Scott Frost, I know everyone was upset with him, but at least they would barely lose. They would rip your heart out in a million different ways because, we almost won against Ohio State and Michigan, and we fumbled late in the fourth quarter. But at least they were competitive. Now they're getting destroyed. And everyone's telling me, give Matt Rule time. And yes, I'm going to give Matt Rule time like everyone else. But this is bad. I mean, Nebraska's not super talented like they used to be, but they've always been at least competitive. Scott Frost, like whoever's been the coach before that.
Best 3-9 team ever.
They just can't compete anymore. I mean, 45-7. And I know that, Michigan fans are talking about how, great their team is, that they possibly be the best team in college football this year. And that maybe that's true. Like, Michigan looks pretty good. I'm not going to disagree with that. I'm not going to say that they're the best team in college football right now, but they look pretty good. But this was a bad performance from Nebraska. And the fact that it was at home for them. Like, their crowd couldn't even do anything. Like, it wasn't even competitive in the slightest. Like, in the third or fourth quarter, maybe they're down by 7 or 10, and then maybe they lose by 17-21. No, they just got destroyed. And it doesn't matter who's in at quarterback. Jeff Sims, they've taken him out, and the backup's not doing any better. Just Nebraska's awful, and Matt Rule has a lot of work to do.
Usually year two, there's a big jump. So hopefully for Nebraska, they can make that jump. But
yeah, they're going to have to because, you can't fire Scott Frost, and be as mad as the fans were about him and then get worse. And right now they are worse than they were last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Texas putting the beat down on Kansas in this one. Unfortunately, Jalen Daniels wasn't playing. Bean, I forgot his first. Sam Bean's his first.
Jason Bean.
Jason Bean. He's not bad, but he's no Jalen Daniels. This game wasn't competitive. Do you have much to say? I turned this game off.
Yeah, Jason Bean, ironically, was the one that beat Texas 2 years ago in that game where Kansas went 2-10 and one of their wins was over Texas. It was that 58-55 game or whatever the score was. That was him. I think he's a solid quarterback, but for whatever reason, he just couldn't get anything going in this game. To be fair, Texas's defensive line is insane, and I think that really shut down, Kansas. And the fact that they weren't able to really run the football either with Devin Neal, that helps Kansas's offense out tremendously when they can run the football, and that sets up play action pass and, scrambling with Jalen Daniels. And Jason Bean is a lesser version of Jalen Daniels. He can do all those things, just not as well. But yeah, this game was not close at all. Texas flexed their muscles on the ground, through the air. And yeah, it wasn't close at all. And I think Jalen Daniels could have made it a bit closer, but the way Texas played in this game, I don't think that even Jalen Daniels could have really made this a completely competitive game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about Texas soon as they have a huge game coming up.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Mm-hmm. And Northwestern being a little close, keeping it competitive with Penn State for a while. Of course, the Nittany Lions ended up pulling away. But
Mm-hmm. I mean, this game was 10-10 at the half, and the only thing I can think of, and I know it's not the same level, but Alabama was tied with the Citadel 10-10 once at half, and then Alabama won 60-10. It feels about the same thing, just Northwestern's obviously better than the Citadel. But I turned the game on early third when it was 10-10. And I was like, really? Is Northwestern, after beating Minnesota, are they legit now? Are they going to knock off the Nittany Lions in a massive upset? And then Penn State got rolling. And I don't even know really what to think about the Nittany Lions right now, because you see like Drew Aller's stats, 189 yards, Singleton on the ground at 80. I mean, those are fairly pedestrian stats for a team that's sixth in the country. And they're playing on the road versus a team that they were favored to beat by like 20-something. So I don't know. I think they're really good. I've seen some people say that possibly they're the best team in the Big Ten East. I don't know about that. I think that they're really good. And I think that talent-wise, they're close. They're about at Michigan's level. Ohio State's the most talented team still, but they've shown cracks at times. So that's an interesting race. But Penn State keeping things close against Northwestern and a half is a bit interesting. And as Jim Hines, like you just pointed out here, 100% agree. Aller did struggle a bit at Illinois as well, and he struggled a bit in this game. So that's going to definitely be something to keep an eye on. He's going to have to play more consistently at home and on the road if the Nittany Lions are going to reach the heights they want to reach. I think a lot of people got really high on Penn State after the 31-0 win over Iowa, because they just kind of like shut them down. Iowa's defense couldn't really slow down Penn State, but that was at home. So we're going to have to see more from Penn State to see how good they are. It was a good win in the second half, but keeping it close in the first was kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's some sort of curse with playing at Northwestern? Like, teams always seem to play sleepy there. Like Ohio State last year played sleepy.
Well, I mean, Ohio State fans would argue it's the weather. I mean, I don't know how much the weather actually played a factor in that game or not. It was a little interesting for Ohio State last year, but I mean, it's an interesting environment. I mean, it doesn't feel like your traditional, Big Ten, stadium environment. It's just it's Ryan Field. It's just everything about it feels smaller. And maybe, like you said, just the opposing teams that play there, it's like they feel like it's a practice game. I don't know. You never want to treat that like that, though. Northwestern still has some quality talent, even if it's not all over the roster. You just never want to, let your guard down. But yeah, Penn State woke up in the second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, people say that Washington always has trouble in the desert, and whichever Arizona school they're playing, Arizona State, and this turned their head again. I mean, it's still crazy numbers by Michael Penix, but overall the team didn't play that well. Are you at all worried about Washington? I mean, I know they got their bye week and then the big game against Oregon. Does this concern you at all, or do you think they're just looking ahead?
I don't really know what to feel about this game. I didn't see any of it.
Oh, yeah, Pac-12
Network. Yeah, because I don't have the Pac-12 Network. The Pac-12 Network's gone after this year, so now I'll be able to basically watch everything unless it's on Peacock. So now Peacock's replacing the Pac-12 Network, where I can't see it. But, yeah, this game, Arizona, I don't know how good or bad they are. I mean, Mississippi State does not look that great, but to their credit, Arizona kept it close, took it overtime. So that kind of made me feel, they're not a bad team. And there is the mantra that everyone says that playing in the desert has this effect or something. I don't know. I mean, possibly it does. It's a long travel. I mean, that's for sure.
Air might be dry. It might be harder to breathe because the air might be a little dry.
So, I mean, all that could actually play a factor, but I don't know. I mean, Penix played well, and they got the job done. And like with the other teams that kind of had scares this past week, a win's a win. And it didn't hurt Washington in the rankings. They stayed at 7. I thought possibly they could drop a spot, but they didn't. And, like you said, they got a bye, and they got a big game coming up after that. So, yeah, they could have been looking ahead. I mean, you never want to see signs like that from a team. You want to see a team that just plays well every game. And I know that's almost impossible, but even when a team doesn't play that well, like Washington here, if they're not playing as well, you would have liked to have still seen them win by like 17, because it's like, you know what? Washington didn't have their best game, but they still won pretty comfortably. But because they only won by 7, it kind of opens people's eyes. Kind of like with USC. We're going to get to them as well. They've been keeping it close the last couple weeks. So it just doesn't really give you confidence that they're championship material. But we're going to know more about Washington in the coming weeks. They got the job done. It's about all you can say. But they could have played better.
Another team that definitely could have played better in the second half is USC.
All I know, and Tim, he defended his statements on Mark the other night by saying he never said USC's defense was going to be top 30 or top 40 in the country. But he did say that USC's defense was going to be improved.
Top 50. He said top 50.
Top 50. And unfortunately, USC's defense is not improved, or at least in the second half. I don't know if they laxed because they were winning. I don't know. There's a million different arguments that you can say. And Shedeur Sanders, to his credit, is a fantastic player. He has so much skill. 3 for like 371, 5 touchdowns, a little bit less than Caleb Williams, 403 and 6 touchdowns, which is insane. But it's going to be a shame, though, for USC, though, if they just cannot take advantage of Caleb Williams. If their defense is going to be enough to keep them from the playoff again. Because their offense is insane. It's great. It's fantastic. Like, we know the numbers, the metrics, the stats. They're top 5 and everything. But their defense is horrible. And it feels like Iowa, but reverse. It just, you're talking about Iowa's defense, but their offense is abysmal. And it's the other way around with USC. Their offense is elite, but their defense can't get it together. And they have talent on that side of the ball. It's not like they have no talent. But, obviously every USC fan out there is wondering if they need a new defensive coordinator. That's probably the case. But all around, USC won. A win is a win, like with all the other teams. But they should have won this game by more, and they should have never taken their foot off the gas. They should have kept Colorado at bay, won this game by 20-something points, and no one would be saying anything after that Arizona State somewhat of a scare. Now that they've had 2 back-to-back performances where their defense let them down, it's going to be a problem when they start playing the better offenses in the conference. What if they get, outscored against some team? It could happen. Some team could score more because their defense just struggles. So I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you, Eric, 100%. I've actually theorized that in my mind. I really have, for sure. I'm not, no lie, not stealing it from you. I'm serious. In my mind, I'm just like, what if they combine USC's offense, Iowa's defense? It'd be insane. Top team in the country by far. But that's why college football is the way it is. Every team is imperfect, even though there have been some insane teams like Georgia and Bama and LSU and other teams in the past that won it all. But even they have some weaknesses. But yeah, I agree 100%. You put those offense and defense together, insane. But USC's defense is probably going to hold them back if they can't improve from where they want to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be it would be such a shame if Caleb Williams was facing at USC, man. After what he said about Notre Dame in the little fingernail painting, I'm not a big fan of him. But I just hope that Notre Dame's receivers will come back and be healthy by the time we play USC, because USC secondary did not look good. So that's the big hope, that our wide receivers can take advantage of their weaknesses and we can pull out a win at home.
Yeah, it should make it a lot easier for Sam Hartman to score.
Man, Stanford was up 6-0 in this game. Because I was on a call with Tony and Chris Sirk, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, Stanford might win," but Oregon did wake up and win this one.
Yeah, this feels like a take a picture of the scoreboard while you got the lead type of game. Stanford, their fall from grace from the Jim Harbaugh and early David Shaw teams, it's unreal. They're horrible. I mean, they're the only Pac-12 team to lose to an FCS team. They lost to Chuck
Sacramento
Taylor's
State.
former team, Sacramento State, and that was just a bad loss. I get it that Sacramento State, they might know his tendencies. Some of the players are still there, but still, that's just a bad loss. Stanford's struggling, and yeah, Oregon started out slow, but they put their foot on the gas and never looked back. And they've got some big showdowns coming up where we're really going to know how good Oregon is. We're really going to know how good all these teams in the Pac-12 are coming up soon because they're all planning to play each other. They're all going to beat each other up. And it'd be insane if none of them make the playoff because of it, because the conference is so good. There's so many good teams that no team gets represented in the CFP. That'd be crazy. But conference is fantastic, and Oregon, they showed their mettle against Stanford, who definitely needs some better days ahead.
Okay, I have to tell you this quick story. So you know Lee Corso from College Game Day, and you know how he coached at Indiana.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
So one time they were playing Ohio State, and they scored. They scored first in the game, and Lee Corso called timeout. And then the team. Do you know this story?
Yeah, that's why I referenced it. That's actually what I was referencing.
Take a picture, yeah.
It's so good. I love how he told the story. I mean, they were up 7-0, take a picture, and then they lost 56-7 or whatever. It was incredible. It was back in like the early 70s. Yeah. I mean, hey, they won the game. No, they didn't, but for brief, they were up. It was great. Yeah, I was gonna let you tell the story though, but yeah, I remember that one. That's why I referenced it. It's hilarious. Lee Corso's awesome.
Yeah. So the Tide look like they're getting. I mean, Mississippi State is they're a bad SEC team, but Alabama does look like they're getting their act together. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next week. We'll get to that game, but quick, what do you think about the Tide?
I just feel like Alabama is finally utilizing Jalen Milroe like I felt that he needed to be utilized back in the Texas game. I'm not saying that Alabama would have beat Texas if they were running the offense like they're running it now. They probably still don't win. But if he doesn't throw those 2 picks and only throws 1 or neither, who knows? But this game right here, like you said, Mississippi State is proven themselves to be pretty bad. Granted, we know why, because unfortunately, rest in peace again to Mike Leach. I say it every week because he made Mississippi State what it was, the air raid. Will Rogers throwing 60 times. That's gone. And it's like they're trying to run. They can't run on anybody. And it's terrible. So Mississippi State's going to be pretty awful, it seems, unfortunately, for Will Rogers. Just the offense is not being run to his capabilities. And Alabama is looking better. Their defense has been stepping up. And Jalen Milroe running the football, and they're having him make throws that are not, putting it really in harm's way. So all around, it's looking better for him. It's looking better for the team. And if Alabama can keep this up, they got a tough game coming up. But if they play, mistake-free football, they can still – everything's in front of them. They can still be a CFP contender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't catch this game because I was watching Notre Dame and doing the post-game show, but good win for the Tide for sure. And, oh, man, good old Brian Kelly.
I don't even know. This game, I watched almost the entire game because, it came on at like 6 and all those 7:30 games would still be on when this one was over. So I was like locked into this game. And I picked LSU. I believed in the Tigers. I thought, you know what? Still got more talent. Jade Daniels is experienced. Ole Miss didn't show much against Alabama on offense. And whoa. The offensive explosion from Ole Miss. 720 yards of offense. It was insane. Like, the missed tackles were incredible. LSU was not tackling at all in this game. Ole Miss just kept on running the ball. They kept on throwing the ball. I don't even know. There was no defense really on either side of the ball, either team. The thing is I don't know if LSU's defense is bad. It quite possibly could be bad because they gave up 45 to Florida State, who hasn't had an offensive performance like that again against anybody, not even Boston College. And then you look at Arkansas, a team that's struggling right now. LSU barely won that game at home, and KJ Jefferson had one of his best performances of the season against LSU. And then this game, you give up 700 yards to a team that Alabama only gave up like 290. or 300 yards. So, yeah, something's wrong with LSU's defense, and it's going to cost them a lot this season because Jane Daniels is playing good football. He is playing good football, but the defense is usually LSU's strong point. It doesn't seem like it this year. Maybe they'll get it fixed. Maybe this is just an aberration. Maybe it's just one of those games, kind of like that Texas A&M LSU game a few years ago where it went to like 7-8 overtimes or whatever, and it was a crazy game. Maybe it's just one of those games, one of those weird SEC games, that ends up being this high scoring with a lot of offense. But it just seems like LSU's defense is a recurring pattern of not playing that well, giving up a lot of yards against teams that basically did not play as well on offense against anyone else except them. And it was enough for Ole Miss to win 55-49. It was a great game. But, yeah, LSU's defense, they cost them this game. They should have won if they defended better.
We had a purple Brian Kelly sighting in this game. Brian Kelly, he was not very happy at his defense, and he was yelling, and he looked like a grape, man. He looked like a big, fat grape, and it was a thing of beauty to see. Now, they could be better next year if they fire Matt House, the defensive coordinator. This guy did not do a great job last year, but this year he's looking – it got worse.
A lot worse.
It got worse. So it'll be interesting to see if LSU can recover next year. But no playoffs for BK, and I don't think they're going to be beating Alabama or A&M this year. So I see at least an 8-4 year for Kelly. Maybe the hot seat will start to heat up a bit in Baton Rouge, as I feel like they've gotten rid of coaches for doing worse than 8-4. So we'll see how short the leash is on BK and Baton Rouge. But hey, LSU fans, I told you so.
Well, I mean, the funny thing is that even a week ago, a lot of people were saying LSU is the best team in the West and that they were going to win the West. And I get that because Alabama struggled. They looked pretty bad at times, especially that South Florida game. The infamous South Florida game with the rain delay, and they put up the final touchdown with a minute left and only won 17-3. Of course, it looked like LSU is the best team in the West. But, man, how the tide, no pun intended, kind of pun intended, have turned. Alabama looks better now than LSU, and maybe that can change. Football's weird. Football's really weird. Alabama could drop next week's game. LSU can win next week's game by a lot, and then everything's shifted again. And it looks like LSU is the best team in the West again. But the way LSU's defense is playing right now, they are not the best team in the West. They have to clean that up because the offense is fine, but the defense is really bad for LSU standards. It's really bad. And we'll have to see if they can improve on that because, again, if they want to win the West, that's the side of the ball that's going to get them there. We know what Jade Daniels can do.
Mm-hmm.
Easy win.
Easy win. Easy win.
Yeah, both those games were not very close.
Easy win. Easy but unexpectedly easy win.
I picked Florida. I picked Florida. I am not picking Florida on the road anymore unless they're favored by a lot because Florida doesn't win on the road. Like I just saw the stat like last week. They said Florida's lost like 15 of their last 17 road games. So don't pick Florida to win on the road. I made the mistake. Don't do it. Bad move. Kentucky, they got a pretty good home environment. I think they're a pretty good team, but we're really going to know how good they are when they play at Georgia. So they're coming up next. So, yeah, Florida, they are not the same team on the road as they are in the swamp, and especially when they're playing Tennessee. That was a great performance from them. But you want to talk about missed tackles? The running back for Kentucky, Ray Davis, had a good game. I'm not taking anything away from his performance. 280 yards, a salute to Ray Davis and his performance. But I watched the first quarter of this game, and there was like 4 plays where Florida had him tackled in the backfield, and they let him go, and he picked up 15 yards. And the commentators were like, Ray Davis is insane. How do you get out of that tackle? I'm like, they're not tackling. Florida is not tackling. That's why. So, yeah, Florida, road team. They're one of the worst road teams I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, man, they made Vanderbilt look like Death Valley last year, man.
Yeah, that's not good.
But hey, man, how good do you think this Kentucky team is? We'll talk about it later, but do you think that they are going to be a top 25 team?
Well, I mean, it helps that they're already 5-0 and they got the quote unquote good win under their belt against Florida. But I remember the same team beat Eastern Kentucky a couple weeks ago, 28-17. And they were struggling hard in that game. Now, granted, I will reiterate, teams fluctuate from week to week. Sometimes they play well, sometimes they play bad. We don't always see the best or worst of a team in every given week. Maybe this is Kentucky's best here. Maybe this is their absolute best and they never play this well again. Or maybe this is just the beginning of what's to come and Kentucky improves and they're, like 9-3, 10-2, and they're really good. I don't know. But I can say that Kentucky has looked pretty bad in some of their early games. And they seem to be hitting their stride. But Graham Mertz outthrew Devin Leary in yards. So even though they won this game, Leary didn't do anything. So once Kentucky has to start playing teams where Leary has to throw the ball and he has to be accurate, he's thrown a lot of picks already this season, that's when you're going to know Kentucky, how good they are. I think that they probably will be 8-4 because the way the schedule's lining up, it's achievable. 7-5, 8-4 at worst. But I still don't know how good they actually are yet, even though this was a good win. But Florida, I will reiterate, played an awful game.
I gotta admit, man, I thought Florida's defense was taking a turn with new coordinator Austin Armstrong, but it looks just as bad as it did with Dan Mullen and Todd Grantham, man. We'll see if they can get it together. But
Tennessee just wishes that the Florida game was at Tennessee this year.
Yeah.
That's all I can say, because if it was, Tennessee wins. I mean, Florida always plays hard against the Volunteers. They do, because they almost beat them last year, even though it was in Neyland. It was like 38-33. But still, Florida's just a bad road team.
Mizzou won against Vandy.
Yeah, that good win, even though Vandy's not – it looks like Vandy's regressed this year. They don't look as good. And it's still a good win, though, because you have the big showdown coming up next week. They didn't overlook Vandy. That was a good win.
Fresno could be going to a New Year's Six bowl.
Somebody on Mark's one of his streams said Wyoming was the best Group of 5 team this year, and they've got the showdown of their life coming up next week. It's Fresno at Wyoming. That's going to be a good game, but Fresno, if they win that game, then they're going to prove that they are the best Group of 5 team.
I'm excited to watch that. Man, I was rooting for Arkansas in this game. My buddy Sam, my new friend Sam, he's a big Arkansas fan.
What happened to Sam Pittman in Arkansas? It feels like Dave Aranda in Baylor, but maybe not as bad yet. But Arkansas, a couple of years ago, College Game Days talking about, man, they could win the West. They're really good. Now they're 2-3, 0-2 in the SEC, and they just don't look that good. I'm not saying A&M played horrible in this game or anything. I mean, they played pretty good and they won, but Arkansas has regressed. And I miss the Sam Pittman of old, where he's going crazy and they're having those locker room chants and everything. I don't know. They just don't have. They just don't have that same level of effort, enthusiasm, passion, whatever you want to call it, that they had a couple years ago when they were playing so hard. I don't know. Hopefully Arkansas can turn it around, but good win for A&M. But the Razorbacks are struggling.
Yeah. Minnesota needed that win.
Yeah.
Poor UConn, man. Blocked PAT at the end.
That's a heartbreaker. And they were up 17-0 in this game. For whatever reason, because every single game was at half of the early games. I flipped this game on, and UConn was up 17-0. And right when I turned it on is when things started to shift, and Utah State started to come back. So, yeah, UConn, I don't think that they're awful. They're not as bad as they were a couple years ago when they went 1-11 or whatever. I think they're better than that, but they can't win either. They've been competitive in a few of these games, but they can't win. So it is what it is. But yeah, Utah State, they're not what they were a few years ago, and they needed a win here.
Clemson got off the schneid and took down the Fruit in the Dome.
I'm shocked on this game, to be honest. I thought it'd be close. Because it's one of those games, we were talking about all those road games for teams that were struggling. I felt Clemson could lose this one because obviously Syracuse has beaten them before, back in years ago. And I felt like Clemson was struggling, that this could be like a one-score game. And I went Clemson. Clemson dominated here. It wasn't close. And I don't know if that means Syracuse is not good at all and that they're going to go 5-7, 6-6, or if it just means that Clemson coming off the loss, wanting to bounce back, prove that they're still a good team. Because whatever it was, Clemson played good. It was a good performance that they needed, and then to prove that they're still, despite the record and despite the hole that they're in the ACC, they're still a top tier ACC team.
Yeah, Cade Klubnik is the real deal, man. I mean, he's looked good. He hasn't. I don't think he's been the reason that Clemson's. I mean, he had a bad game against Duke. I'll say that. But overall,
that was week one. I mean, that's why, as I've said before, week one games are not indicative of how good a team actually is. A lot of people overreact to week one games, like we all know, and we've probably been guilty of before. Probably everybody has, of overreacting to a week one game. But Clemson played awful in week one. Klubnik played awful. But that game is not how bad they are. I mean, they're clearly better than that performance. And again, if they don't turn the ball over all those times, that game was like 28-26. So even though, quote unquote, if everything went their way, they probably still lose that game 28-26. If they lose that game 28-26, I don't think everyone's hitting the panic button. Because I remember, the live streams, the videos after that game, Clemson fans we're horrible now. We're going to go 5-7. And I'm like, you do realize that you had 2 fumbles in the red zone, right? And you had 2 missed field goals, right? You literally were this close to 28-26. You lose that game 28-26. No one's saying anything super negative about Clemson. Yeah, it's still a bad loss because Clemson was favored to beat Duke. But no one would have been going crazy and Clemson's going off the rails and they're just horrible. Clemson is definitely worse than they were a few years ago. They clearly need the portal. They clearly need more talent, and Dabo has to do that or they're never going to be an elite team again. But they're also not as bad as that 28-7 loss, and they're starting to prove it here. And Klubnik's getting better, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously, I do think they still need some changes as position coaches, like my Clemson guys said. Mm-hmm. But hey, they have a path. I mean, they'll need some help, but there's still that path there to get back to Charlotte for the championship game against Florida State, get that rematch, and who knows what will happen. Maybe Florida State
possibly backdoor their way in. You never know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Tulane.
Good win for them.
Mm-hmm. JMU still rolling.
James Madison was beating South Alabama by a lot, and then South Alabama kind of came back a bit. I think South Alabama is still a good team despite the record. They played some good opponents, and they do have that one over Oklahoma State. But, yeah, James Madison is pretty good.
Yeah, unfortunately, since they're transitioning from the FCS, I still don't think they're allowed to go into a bowl this year.
I wish they were able to.
Yeah.
You know what blows my mind? What blows my mind is that these teams that transit, you look at Bellarmine in college basketball, they transition over from D2 to D1, and they're really good. And finally, when they're going to be able to go to the tournament, is probably when they're not going to be able to go to the tournament. But when they couldn't go is when they won their conference. Here, you got James Madison transitions over to the FBS. They're playing well. Can make a bowl game. And watch by the time they're able to, they're horrible. It's usually how this thing works. You were good when you can't go. And then you're bad when you can. It makes no sense. And as Jim Hahn says, stupid, it is. If they're transitioning over to the FBS or Division I in college basketball, you should be able to play. Because you've transitioned, you're in, and you're winning. You're obviously competent and able to play in the big dance or in a bowl game if you're winning the games. It's insane. I don't understand it. If you're not going to let them play, then they shouldn't even be transitioned yet.
Mm-hmm. Indiana's win over Akron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why a coaching change occurred.
Yeah. Did you see any of this game, Boston College and Virginia?
I did turn on the CW for brief. Still don't know how that's a sports network. But yeah, I turned it on for brief. And Virginia, I don't understand
They
them. Man.
blew it.
Virginia is like Nebraska, but they haven't won a game. I mean, they lose to James Madison by 1. They lose to NC State by 3, and you lose to Boston College by 3. They could be 3-2 right now. Literally 3-2. They're this close to 3-2, just like Louisville. Instead of being 5-0, they could have been 2-3 if things go the other way. That's why I'm saying, like, teams are so close to being, a lot different of a record than they are, either being good or bad. Virginia is not a good football team. I'm not saying they are, but they could also be 3-2. And if they were, then I think people would have a different opinion of them. I mean, this Boston College team lost to Northern Illinois, and they barely beat Holy Cross. And, I mean, good win for them. It's not going to help Halfley. I mean, obviously if you lose, it don't help Halfley. But, I mean, they survived here. And in Virginia, they had a lot of chances. And just, as always, they're 0-5 for a reason. They just can't find a way to win.
It'll be interesting to see if they can survive the FCS scare coming. That's William & Mary. A little intra-Virginia battle.
Yeah, wouldn't be a bit surprised if they won or lost that one. You just never know with them.
John Pius, who I went to high school with, he is a projected third-round NFL pick for William & Mary. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
awesome stuff. I always like when you have players from schools like that are high picks, and then people are like, why are they getting drafted so high? Well, I mean, hey, there's a good player, even if he's at a small school. I mean, hey.
This was an interesting game that I couldn't watch because it was on the Pac-12 network, and also I was
same. I did not get to see any of this one. I will say though that Cal, I mean, they're this close to 4-1, and that would look really good for their upcoming game that they play coming up next against a really tough opponent. I feel like Cal has moments of being decent, but they just can't close a lot of the time. To their credit, they did put Arizona State away, but they should have beat Auburn. I mean, the field goals blew that game. And it's not like if Cal was 4-1, I don't really think many people would actually think that they're like good or anything, but Wilcox needs wins. And I feel like, between Halfley, and Wilcox, I think Wilcox could still possibly save his job. And like that Auburn win would have really helped. They're not a good team, but Jaden Ott's a good running back, and Cal's defense at times is good enough. So they're 3-2. Probably not going to make a bowl. They could possibly make a bowl, but they're not horrible. They're just not very good either.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, man, but Indiana, that was ugly for the Hoosiers.
Well, I mean, Tom Allen is in trouble. That's for sure. He had the good seasons in 2019, 2020. In the last 3 years, his record is like 7-21, and he's like 2-19 in the Big Ten. So this is like Jerry DiNardo stuff. It's bad. It's really bad for Indiana right now, and their talent is not indicative of the results. That Louisville game was Indiana, quote unquote, at its best. You saw moments, Taven Jackson throwing the ball to Jalen Lucas, but for whatever reason, last 2 games, they don't throw it to Jalen Lucas. Just he's not involved in the offense anymore. That's why Walt Bell is fired. And I don't like when anybody gets fired. I never get excited when a coach gets fired because you think about their lives with their families and everything. I just don't, get excited when a coach gets fired. But this one makes sense. Walt Bell has an offense that has talent on it, like players that I legitimately think could be in the NFL. Cam Camper, I think, could be in the NFL. Jalen Lucas, I think, could be in the NFL. They've got 2 quarterbacks, Brennan Sorsby, Taven Jackson. They can't figure out which one's better. I think both are pretty good. But the offensive play calling is horrible. You're running a 5'8", 5'9", 160-pound running back up the middle. What's he going to do behind a bad O-line? He's not going to be able to do anything. You put him in space. You run him to the outside. You pass. You give him screen passes. You do things that you can actually get him space, which is what a small player needs when he's quick. You don't run him up the middle and potentially injure him when he's getting tackled by 320-pound D lineman. It's insane. Walt Bell, like I said, was running the offense wrong, and hopefully Rod Carey, who's been on Indiana staff for a couple years, he used to be the Northern Illinois and Temple coach back in the 2010s, has a 64-50 record overall, so he's a pretty solid coach overall. Hopefully he fixes this offense. And if he does, and he can get Indiana to 5 or 6 wins, then that might be enough to save Allen's job. But if this don't work, then it might be curtains for Tom Allen and the Hoosiers.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying Maryland played well. They're a good team. Like, Maryland's actually good. But still, the Indiana should have been a lot more competitive in this game. And the offense was horrible.
Purdue putting on a show.
Yeah. Purdue is a team that is capable of playing good on offense, and Illinois is obviously pretty bad. It might come down to Illinois, Indiana, and maybe Northwestern for the worst team in the conference. I don't know. I mean, Northwestern did beat Minnesota, but I still think they're pretty bad. Illinois and Indiana aren't very good. I think Indiana's better than Illinois and Northwestern when they play well, but it's about the play calling. But yeah, Illinois is struggling. Good win for Purdue, but yeah, Illinois is just proving they're bad.
Mm-hmm.
Rutgers, man, 52-3. Wagner's bad, but that's what you're supposed to do. Like, old Rutgers, this had been like a 17-3 win. Rutgers, I mean, Indiana is going to be an underdog to Rutgers at home. So, yeah, that shows you how much better Rutgers is. Because a few years ago, Indiana used to be favored by 20 against Rutgers.
Man, I thought Georgia Tech was turning the corner. I thought they might be a bowl team, but
I mean, Georgia Tech, the way they played against Louisville gave me inspiration that they could be solid. And Haynes King threw for 348, 4 touchdowns. He had 2 picks.
no
But
picks.
the defense, like, had to have been awful. I didn't see this game. But
What happened in the second and third quarters, man?
21 points to Bowling Green in a quarter. Like, if you gave up 21 to Bowling Green in the whole game, it would still be kind of questionable. You gave up 21 in a quarter. So, yeah, bad performance from Georgia Tech, especially on defense. And Jackson saying they should have hired Dion. Yeah, maybe that could have helped. I don't know. But, yeah, I think Georgia Tech has some talent, and they've shown at times to be solid, but this was awful.
Yeah, man. Shout out to my task supervisor, Maddie. She went to Bowling Green, so happy for Maddie.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Texas Tech beating Houston. As Dana Holgorsen, will Dana Holgorsen last the year?
He should probably be on the way out, unfortunately. And again, don't like when coaches get fired, but Houston has a standard. And now that they're a quote-unquote power team, Power 4 conference team once the Pac-12 is gone, this is bad. I mean, Houston a few years ago was in the top 25 and winning 9 games. Now, I mean, Texas Tech has proven to be a pretty bad team this year. At times they've been bad. Like the Oregon game, they were pretty good, but other games they've been pretty rough, and they blew out Houston. It's probably, like I said, curtains for Dana Holgorsen. I agree.
Mm-hmm. This game was crazy, man.
It was 35-7. I picked UCF. I'm like, you know what? Baylor struggling. Dave Aranda, you know, the good days are over. They're losing everything. I can't beat anybody. They lost to Texas State. UCF's going to win. I picked them like 17, I think. I don't even remember what I picked them, how much I picked them to win by. 35-7, and I'm like, yeah, I picked the right team. All I know is I saw 35-7, and then I saw 36-35 final. And I'm like, what happened? What in the world happened? 26 points in the fourth? Like, I don't know. All I know is that UCF, this is a classic case of throwing away a win. 35-7, 36-35 to a team that lost to Texas State. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Good win for Dave Aranda. Still one of my favorite coaches in college football. I want him to win. Really like Dave Aranda and what he was doing at Baylor before they started struggling, but I'm shocked UCF threw this away. I thought Gus Malzahn was not capable of losing a game after being up by 28. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Did you see the field goal try?
I think I did see. I did see it a couple times on replay. Yes.
Yeah, man. I was like, oh, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna? No, yeah.
It's insane. I don't even know what to think, like I said, because when a team's at 35-7, you just that late in the game against a team that has shown no life at all, you just wouldn't expect it. And anything's possible. Like in football, I mean, obviously no one's going to be like, oh, okay, Georgia's going to lose to the Citadel. So, I mean, you could say the term anything's possible is not true, but it technically is. And this proves it because, if you just get some good plays together and string some good drives, you can come back from a 28-point deficit.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm rooting for Navy, man. But
South Florida 3-2.
yeah.
Interesting. Marshall won. Memphis Boise State was underrated. Boise State is 2-3. I still think they're decent. Ashton Genty's a good back. I think they're a decent team, but yeah, Boise's nowhere where they used to be. In the 2000s and everything. They've fallen far from that, but they still have a shot potentially to win.
Is Dirk Cotter still their defensive coordinator?
Can't remember. That's a good question. Possibly. I think it is. I think he is. Now that I think about it, I think he is.
Oh no, he was only there for 2022.
Oh, he's not there anymore. Yeah, it's hard. Not many people keep up with Boise State anymore. They're not what they were under Chris Peterman back in the 2000s, and even before that with Brian Harsin. They've just fallen. They're not what they were. They have good players, but like if this was Boise from back then, they would not be 2-3. They'd probably be 4-1 right now. They lost the UCF and Memphis games in heartbreaking fashion.
Rice 3-2. Good for Rice.
JT Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
You were right on Georgia Southern. I picked Coastal. Coastal is not as good either. They've fallen. They're not the Chanticleers in the top 25. Tim Beck, they're 2-3, even with Grayson McCall. Ugh. You got Jackson saying it's the first time he's ever watched the CW with the football games. Mike says you didn't watch the Airvert on the CW back in the day. Jackson says nope. Yeah, I've never watched the CW in my life. Now I have watched reruns of a lot of WB shows from the 90s, but I have not watched the CW.
Iowa and Michigan State, man. This is two not great teams. I mean, Iowa, they're not healthy, but they didn't look great. Michigan State, they're kind of a mess.
Yeah, Michigan State is just going through turmoil of the worst kind. Coaching, carousel going on there. Mel Tucker out, and I mean they're struggling. I mean, could they end up being the worst Big Ten team? Probably not. I mean, they still probably have more talent than a couple of teams, but if they keep playing bad, they could end up being the worst. Iowa now, K. McNamara made a video on this earlier today that he's likely out for the season. And is it going to matter? I don't even think it's going to matter because Iowa's offense, the scheme, Brian Ferentz, like we talked about it for years. It's bad. It's awful. It's terrible. It's 1980s style. It's not ever going to be successful. And McNamara at Michigan showed that he was capable, that he was a top half quarterback in the Big Ten. And his stats were atrocious. And granted, Iowa fans, some say that he was injured in the preseason and that carried over into the season. But I still believe that the play calling is the main reason why all quarterbacks are, bad at Iowa, at least recently. And as Eric says, it's been confirmed. I saw that reports earlier saying it was likely. So when I made the video, I said he was likely out for the season. But regardless if he's likely or all the way, I just don't think it's going to matter. I feel like Iowa's going to win basically the same amount of games anyway because their schedule's easy. I mean, their toughest game left's at Wisconsin. I mean, they play at Wisconsin, and every other team that they play, they're probably going to be favored against. They play Minnesota at home. a team that they've beaten basically every single time in the last decade. They play at Nebraska. Nebraska having one of the worst seasons I've ever seen, which I thought they couldn't get any worse, and they look like they have. They do play Rutgers at home. Rutgers is better, but Rutgers' biggest weakness is offense, and Iowa's defense could just shut them down to nothing. So Iowa could go 9-3 with the worst offense of all time. Like, they legitimately could go 9-3 with that schedule with no offense whatsoever.
They just have to beat Purdue, man. Iowa always they have like they're kind of cursed against Purdue.
That is true, and I did mention that Purdue is kryptonite, to your point, and they have enough offense that if Iowa's defense can't like shut them down to like 14, because Iowa, you're not going to beat any team if you don't hold a team like 14 or less. If you give up like in the 20s, Iowa, they scored 26 against Michigan State. That's Michigan State. So yeah. Like I said, I hate it for Cade McNamara. Hopefully he's able to come back next year. But I do feel like that Iowa is basically the same team with or without him. The offense does not allow them to be any better with McNamara. So even with Deacon Hill, I think they could still go 9-3, but we'll see.
I thought Charlie Jones went off. Maybe not.
I can't remember. I know they lost to Illinois 9-6. I remember that.
Oh, man. Country roads take me home. Neil Brown
saved job.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Sorry.
You're good.
Neil Brown saved his job. Like, it's confirmed. He's good to go. Like, no. I don't think his job's completely safe, but wow. 4-1. They're 4-1. And the Big 12 is a lot of teams that aren't looking that good. So we could be seeing 7-5, 8-4 Mountaineers. Who knows? I don't know.
Man, Golden Blue dude, I can see it, man. He's up in heaven, man. He's celebrating, man. He's like, yeah, I told you we were gonna go 8-4. I told you.
Yeah, I miss Golden Blue, dude. Man, again, rest in peace. So much. I miss him a lot, man. It was so fun. I'll never forget when he was like. He was saying the year before, oh, we're going to be 9-3, and West Virginia went like 4-8. I'm like, and he was like, TCU is going to be horrible. And they went to the playoff. It was so funny. But yeah, this year it could possibly be validated. West Virginia is looking pretty good. Granted, TCU's regressed. I mean, this, to me, an underrated storyline about this game is the fact that makes the Colorado win over TCU not look as good. It kind of proved that Colorado possibly isn't that great. I mean, granted, they hung with USC, but their defense is bad. So, again, good win for West Virginia. I'm happy for Country Roads and all their fans that needed some wins. And most important, like you said, for Golden Blue dude in heaven. That's good stuff, man.
I thought, how about that defense, though, by West Virginia? Shut them out in the second half.
It's crazy. I mean, I saw it was 21-14 because I picked TCU. I'm sorry, Mountaineer fans. I wasn't a believer in you. But I picked TCU to win. I was like, 21-14. Yeah, TCU should win. And then I look at it, and I saw a lot of games like this. I was, like, really busy in the afternoon. So I saw a lot of these games where I'm like, yay, the team I picked's going to win. UCF's up against Baylor. TCU's up against West Virginia. And then I come back, and they lose. And I'm like, what in the world happened here? Like, it's insane. That's why we love college football.
My bad, Erica.
Caleb Johnson's break he had like 200 yards on the ground or something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, definitely Erica. She knows more about her Hawkeyes than we do.
Yeah.
I just know offense bad, defense good. That's all I know.
App State with a walk-off field goal.
Yeah, and what's funny about App State is they've been doing this a lot lately, winning these close games. Because wasn't it last year they had the insane game against Troy, where the ball was batted around and then they ran it in or whatever. That was insane. So yeah, App State getting it done.
Air Force, another team in the Mountain West. Them, Fresno, and Wyoming.
Air Force might win the conference if Boise doesn't get their act together. Air Force might win. I mean, because you think about it, Boise barely beat San Diego State. And granted,
Well,
it
them,
was at
Fresno,
San Diego
yeah.
State, but Air Force just destroyed them, even though it was at home.
Yeah, them, then
Or Fresno
Wyoming.
State. That's the other team. Sorry, Fresno State. It's either going to be Fresno, Air Force,
Or
maybe
Wyoming.
Wyoming, Boise. You're right. Fresno
Okay.
is
Well,
really good.
That took a while, but you know what? That's okay. I don't have my internship tomorrow, so I can stay up late. It's okay.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. This has been a
No,
blast.
this is fun. This is fun. This is fun. Okay. Now I have to pull up the preview.
Yeah, Mount West
yeah.
has some good teams for sure. I mean, Air Force, Fresno, Wyoming, Boise could be decent still if they get it together. I like that conference. I don't want Oregon State, Washington State in it, though. They need to be in the Big 12.
We have Wednesday night football. Interesting.
Yeah, it's not the MAC action on Tuesday night, Wednesday night yet, but yeah, I was kind of shocked to see that. Middle Tennessee State was favored in that game, even though they were 1-4.
No faith in Rich Rod.
Insane. I don't even know who to pick in that one. I probably go Jacksonville State because Middle Tennessee State's regressed. Stock still just doesn't have them going anymore.
All right, Friday Night Lights, Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Kansas State at 12.5. Late 12.5.
Oklahoma State has been bad. Like, they've really been struggling. And Mike Gundy, all I know is why is Spencer Sanders at Ole Miss? I've reiterated this to myself.
Did he just take the money and leave?
5 million times. Why did he leave? Because like you said, unless it's an NIL thing, like he's got a good NIL deal at Ole Miss, you know, it doesn't make sense because it's his final year of college football. Like, your last chance to prove to the NFL or anybody for that matter, the XFL, USFL, doesn't matter, that you are a pro quarterback and you're at Ole Miss on the bench behind Jackson Dart, and he's not going to start unless Dart gets injured, which hopefully he doesn't. I don't understand. It was the weirdest transfer of any transfer in the portal this offseason. I mean, you talk about like Sam Hartman. They make sense. He went from Wake to Notre Dame. He knew he was going to start. I mean, Buckner's a little interesting, but Buckner still has years of eligibility left. So even if it doesn't work at Bama, he can leave. Like, I don't understand why Sanders left Oklahoma State, where clearly, even with his turnover issues, would be the starting quarterback right now. He would be. I mean, Bowman's struggling. Alex Bowman, the quarterback for Oklahoma State, has been turning the ball over at even bigger rates than Sanders. And even though this game is at Boone Pickens Stadium, and I'm a big home field guy, you know, because of the fact home field advantage does make a difference, they're struggling this season. Oklahoma State is really struggling. Kansas State lost at Missouri. But, hey, Missouri's been solid, so it's not necessarily a bad loss, and it was a rivalry game. Will Howard has 4 picks, 8 touchdowns. He's playing pretty well, but like I was going to say, like you just said, doesn't seem like he's playing as well as he did last year. I think Kansas State's still going to win, though. I'm going to go with the Wildcats to win 31-17.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking 21-14 Cats.
But if Sanders was still there, despite his turnover problems, the Cowboys would be better. Don't know why he left, besides, like you said, maybe NIL.
They've been playing a whole bunch. I think they've played like 4 quarterbacks this year for Oklahoma State. None of them have looked that good.
Yeah, I saw Alex Bowman in the Iowa State game, and he threw for like 300 yards, I think, around there, but he had like 2 or 3 picks, and he threw a pick late that just blew the game, and it was a terrible pass. It's like, okay, Spencer Sanders used to make bad throws, but this is borderline Jeff Sims bad. Like, it's getting rough here, and it's frustrating because Mike Gundy has been one of the most consistent coaches in college football. He's kind of like Kirk Ferentz, going like 8-4 all the time, and it doesn't look like Oklahoma State's going to be going 8-4 this year. Again, they needed Sanders, but it is what it is. Kansas State should win.
Mm-hmm. His son, Cale Gundy, has played too, and that looked great.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has to win.
I don't even know. This game right here, I'm really interested in because, like, some college football fans, they only want to watch the big teams, the ranked matchups, the teams that are good. I sometimes just like turning on a game between two horrible football teams and seeing what's going to happen. And this is what's going to happen here. A bad football team's going to win. Somebody's going to win, like you said, and I cannot wait to find out who. Nebraska, Jeff Sims, I don't know if he's going to play or not, or if it's going to be the other backup quarterback, but both are horrible.
Luke Altmaier, not much better.
But Luke Altmaier, I had hopes for him when he was at Ole Miss, and he played in the bowl game against Baylor when Matt Corral got injured, and then he came in and he showed flashes, but he had a couple bad throws in that game. And I'm like, you know what? He's really young. He'll shake that off. Illinois, he's still doing it. 5 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I mean, when you look at Nebraska, the leading rusher for Nebraska is the backup quarterback. How? Harburg has 270 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, which is more than Jeff Sims, who's supposed to be the running quarterback, and more than all the running backs. I don't even know what to make of Nebraska. Isaiah Williams is a good player for Illinois. He used to be their quarterback, but he transitioned to a wide receiver. He has no touchdowns. He's got 30 receptions, 446 yards, 0 touchdowns. So all I know is that both these teams are an absolute disaster. But when both teams are an absolute disaster and there's a home field advantage, I'm going Illini 17-14.
17-14. I think each team will have a pick 6. I'll say that. And I'll go with the home team, I guess. Illini 17-16.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Don't trust either team. I mean, I haven't picked Nebraska, Will, to win a game in like 3 years. Like, I just know Nebraska. Just keep me as far away from picking Nebraska. They don't win ever. So Illinois, I'm going with the home team. Obviously, I'm joking there. Nebraska's 2-3. They do win games, but whenever they play a team that's on their level or better, they lose. And I just don't have confidence in the Cornhuskers until they win.
Yeah. All right. Oh, Virginia Tech, Florida State. Do you want to touch on this for a sec, and then we can move on?
Well, I mean, I would say Florida State's going to blow the doors off of them, but, I mean, they did barely beat BC. It was on the road, and it was kind of a weird environment with the weather. I think weather was a bit interesting there. Florida State, it's at home, and I think that they're going to start playing better, to basically, I guess you would say, prove that they are a top 5 team because they have had a couple shaky performances. I'm going to go with Florida State to win 35-10 over Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Appreciate that, Erica.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know Erica was for the Big Red, but we learn something new every day. No, I'm joking. But Florida, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to go Florida State 48-21.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kyron Jones might make a few plays. Yeah, and here we go. My Irish going to Louisville to take on the Cardinals.
Yeah, a much better game, by the way, for ABC than that Virginia Tech Florida State game. Like, that should be ACC Network, not ABC, but I digress. Notre Dame at Louisville. What'd you say?
Maybe CW.
Yeah, maybe CW, which is basically an extension of the ACC network. I mean, it's like the Peacock of the ACC. Instead of putting on a streaming service, we put on a no-name network that no one watches sports for except golf and TV shows. So it's hilarious. But Notre Dame at Louisville. This game right here, I will admit, if Notre Dame had a loss to Duke, I probably would have picked Louisville for sure because of the fact that Notre Dame losing 2 games in heartbreaking fashion back-to-back, it kind of becomes a Nebraska thing where it's like, can we trust them to win a game of this caliber? The difference, though, do I think Louisville is on the level of Ohio State or Duke? They're definitely not on Ohio State's level, but I don't think they're on Duke's level either with a healthy Riley Leonard. I think that Louisville's a good team, but the problem is that Jack Plummer is turnover prone, and Notre Dame's defense is pretty good. He can make bad throws. Plummer can play when he doesn't make bad throws. Louisville's offense is capable, but like I said, he has the tendency to just make horrible throws at times. Thrash is a good receiver, but he's one guy. Can Notre Dame shut him down? If they can shut him down,
Ben Morrison will shut down there.
They don't have other receivers that are anywhere near his level. So if Notre Dame can shut Thrash down, I think that will help. Estime's good on the ground. And even though I think Louisville's defense isn't horrible or anything, it's going to be hard for them to stop him. Hartman hasn't made any mistakes through the air, which is insane. 14 touchdowns, 0 picks. How long is that going to continue? Will he throw a pick in this game or not? Will he finally make a mistake through the air? I don't know, but he has been remarkable through the air, at least with not turning it over. Notre Dame's more talented. It's on the road. It's at night, so the Louisville crowd's going to be slam-packed because they're going to want to, as a top 25 team, if we can win, ACC title hopes and move up in the rankings, it'd be a huge win for them. I think Louisville's going to keep it close, but I'm going to go with Notre Dame for the third consecutive week, and I'm going to pick them to win over Louisville 28-21.
Only 28. I know. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just really hoping that the Notre Dame offense can look like what it looked like the first 4 games of the season, where they're scoring more than 40 points a game. I want to get back to that.
Mm-hmm. I would pick him to score more, but they haven't been doing that recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a bit of a homer pick, but I'm going to go with the Irish to win 45-10.
Yeah, you don't want to hear Austin hearing that. You don't want him to hear that.
But I feel like if we get some of the receivers back, which we'll learn tomorrow in Marcus Freeman's weekly press conference. I'll watch that on YouTube. But yeah, I think Sam Hartman can go back to throwing more touchdowns than just one. Well, actually, no, he didn't even throw a touchdown last week. He threw the 2-point conversion.
Didn't he have a long streak of throwing a touchdown in every game or something like that? I don't know if it was him, but I thought I saw that or something like that. That he thrown a touchdown in like 30 games or something. I don't know though, but yeah. Austin says 34-14.
Austin, do you want to come in?
That's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to come in, Austin? I can send you the link.
I'm shocked that he didn't have it being closer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if you want to come in, just tell us in the chat. But the Red River Rivalry, Oklahoma and Texas.
It's hate week for the Longhorns, and they are very excited about this game. This game right here, I know they beat Bama on the road, but if Texas can beat Oklahoma in this game, I know they did it before last year. They beat Oklahoma, but Oklahoma was worse last year. This game will really help propel Texas to the forefront, where a lot of people will be believers in them. There's a lot of people that are on their bandwagon, but I still feel like there's a good amount of people that think there's a shot Texas could still blow it because they've been doing it for so long. They haven't, proven to be a team that can consistently win these big games in a long time. And they're favored by 6.5. Oklahoma, I think they're a good team. Dylan Gabriel is a good quarterback. He is. He was good at UCF, and he's been good at Oklahoma. And I feel like that their defense has shown some improvements, but in other games, they still kind of struggle a bit, and they haven't really played many high-level teams, to this point. Like, they struggled at Cincinnati a little bit on offense, and then they went out there and, against Iowa State, their defense gave up 20. So their offense struggled a bit at Cincinnati, and their defense struggled a bit against Iowa State. All I know is that Oklahoma is a team that I feel like is way better than last year, but are they an elite team? They still have flaws. I don't know. I think that Texas is the better team. I think that they have way better depth on defense than Oklahoma. And if Quinn Ewers, he's the key. He's the most important player here because if he has a good game, Texas is way better than Oklahoma. But if he has a bad game and Dylan Gabriel can outshine him by far, there's a shot Oklahoma can win. But I do think that Texas is going to win this game. I think that they're going to show that they are a top 5 team and that they want to prove that they're going to be in the college football playoff at the end of the season. I'm going to go with the Texas Longhorns to beat the Oklahoma Sooners 38-28.
Texas is not back. Texas will lose this game. I like this is where they blow it. This is where they blow it.
I'm afraid. I am afraid. I'm not going to lie. I am nervous that they're going to blow it. There is a shot they blow, but I'm going to give Texas the benefit of the doubt. They beat Alabama. They're going to beat Oklahoma.
This is where Dylan Gabriel makes a statement. This is where he's like, hey, I'm a Heisman Trophy contender too. And I think that the Sooners are going to go across the border and win the game 38-27. I think they do it. Texas is not back yet. It's just bound to happen. Like, they've looked so good. I mean, they have had a couple of games, but they are not back, and they will lose the Red River Rivalry to Oklahoma, and then everyone will just dogpile on them again.
This game feels like it has a lot more stakes now because you're saying they're not back, and I'm not really saying that they're back, but just to prove that they're legit, like a top 5 team. Like, we're good. Like, we're really, really good. I'm giving Texas the benefit of the doubt. I think they're going to do it. It don't help, though, that they destroyed Oklahoma last year because that's going to be on their mind. They destroyed us. Now let's get them while everybody thinks they're good. And it's like, so it's possible you're right. It is really possible that you are right and that Oklahoma beats them. And if they do, like, I don't even have, like, a stake here. I like both teams fine. But if Texas loses after I'm actually giving them props, like they're a good team, it's going to be heartbreaking. Don't do this, Texas. Prove you're good. You beat Bama on the road. This is neutral site against your utmost rival. Get it done. Beat Oklahoma. Show you're good. And if Oklahoma wins, good job for Gabriel. But Texas got to do it.
Oh, man. All right. I knew you were saying that. I'm like, all right, I gotta go hard on Oklahoma. All right.
I should have just let you pick first, and then I would have known what was coming.
All right, big noon kickoff. Maryland going to Ohio State. Can the Terps do it? Can they finally beat one of the top 3 teams? Although they did beat Penn State in the COVID year, but that I don't know, it's the COVID year. So
Maryland is good. They're a good team. They have talent. Hemby's been good on the ground. Tagovailoa's been great through the air. I will say, yeah, Texas is not winning 70-0. I mean, that's an insane prediction. That's just anti-Oklahoma right there. There's no way. But back to Big Noon kickoff. Maryland here, I think they're a good team, but and the fact that they hung with Ohio State in 2018 when they were a far inferior team. You remember that game. Everybody remembers that game. Dwayne
Haskins, the Maryland native, pulled it out of his butt.
I watched that game, and, like, I was like, is it going to be another game that Ohio State dropped? Because they lost to Purdue that year. Mm-hmm. And it's like that Maryland almost did. It was insane. Mm-hmm. And then last year, Maryland was really competitive. Last year against Ohio State. Granted, it was the week before the game with Michigan, but still, Maryland was competitive. But something tells me, though, like, if that had been ranked, I'd say it'd even been worse. But Ohio State knows Maryland's good. So they can't really sneak up on them like the last, couple years that, that they've been competitive in some of the games. I think Ohio State, it might be slightly close early, but I think that the Buckeyes are going to shut them down in the second half. I'm going to go with Ohio State to win 35-17.
I think Talia keeps them in it. And I think this game is competitive at half. But in the second half, I do think Ohio State makes just a couple more plays and ends up winning the game. I'm going to go Ohio State 38, Maryland 31. I think Maryland gets like a quick touchdown at the end, goes for the onside kick, but Ohio State gets it.
Yeah, it could be close. I mean, like I said, Maryland's done it before, but I just feel like Ohio State knows Maryland's better and they're going to shut them down.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Oof. This game right here, this is probably the game that I am
forgot about this
conflicted on. I am conflicted here. LSU, I did pick Florida State to beat LSU. I will say that. So I can't say it's like a Purdue thing where I keep picking them and they keep losing. But LSU, you let me down against Ole Miss. I picked you against Ole Miss, and you blew it on defense. Missouri is not as talented as Ole Miss. Missouri is not as talented as Florida State, the two teams that LSU lost to. But Missouri has about the same talent as Arkansas in that area, and LSU barely won that game. So there's a shot, and that was at home for LSU. There's a shot LSU drops this game and falls to 3-3. There is a big chance. And if Missouri wins, I will say, we talk about Neil Brown saving his job. Drinkwitz has saved his job. Drinkwitz has done an incredible job. Beat Kansas State. They're 5-0. If they win this game, contract extension, lifetime contract, all that coming out the door there for Drinkwitz and Mizzou. It's at home, and Missouri has had games in the past where, like that Georgia game, where when they're at home, they can sneak up on you sometimes. They almost beat Georgia last year. They've looked good. I actually think Missouri has looked pretty good. But this feels like a last stand for LSU. They're out of the playoff hunt, but they could still win the West. They would have no shot, you'd think. They're like 23rd, but I mean, if they won out in dominating fashion and then they, beat Georgia or whatever in the SEC championship game, they could get really up there in the rankings. Not saying they'd be in the playoff hunt or anything, but they'd be way up there. So, I mean, they still have stuff to play for. So, I mean, LSU does not need to fold. And this is going to be a game, it's like a, either put up or shut up type of game, as people like to say. This is going to prove whether LSU is a top-tier SEC team or if they're actually just kind of mid. I'm going to go with LSU to win this game on the road, 31-28. But of all the games this week, and I'm going to be wrong on more games because we always are. There's no way that you're only going to get one game wrong. But this is the game that I'm the least confident picking the winner, being LSU. I'm not confident in it, but I'll go with LSU to win 31-28.
Oh, man. Will I go with my heart or will I go with my head? No.
Your heart
yes is the answer. Because my head says LSU defense sucks. They freaking suck on defense. Missouri's gonna light it up. 49-45. The Tigers win of Missouri.
Yeah, the Tigers beat the Tigers. The Yellow Tigers beat the Yellow Tigers. Missouri beats LSU.
Come on, Missouri. Please.
I don't know. I'm going LSU. I think purple and yellow is going to beat yellow and black. I mean, if LSU loses, reevaluation time. Probably going to start going the other way. Like when they play tough teams down the road, not picking them. But I'll give them another crack at it. I'll give them another chance to beat a good team. LSU, I got 31-28.
Mm-hmm. Oh, gosh.
Ooh.
I'm going to have to go with the black.
I'll go Army by 3. I'll go 17-14 Army.
Yeah, I'm thinking I was going to say that too. So, I don't know.
As Jackson would say, great minds think alike. I don't know.
Yeah, great minds think alike on this one. $3 to go to Mississippi State, Western Michigan.
Man, that is a great deal. That is a great deal. It's gonna be a bad game. It's gonna be that's a good deal still, man. Mississippi State, I think they're gonna be Western Michigan. by about 17. That they should win.
This game could be interesting. Rutgers in Wisconsin.
On Peacock. Come on Peacock. This game should at least be FS1 or something. I mean, I don't know. But I think that Wisconsin has shown, at times that they can be a decent team. Like when they beat Purdue on the road, they beat them pretty dominantly. Granted, Purdue has been struggling, but Purdue just bounced back themselves with a pretty good one over Illinois.
Yeah, I don't think Purdue's beaten Wisconsin since like 2003 or something.
Yeah, it's been since 2003. And the funny thing is when we did that game and you picked Purdue and I picked Wisconsin, there was something telling me why I need to pick Wisconsin, and that was why. I forgot that stat. I didn't say it when we did it, but like right after we got off, I was like, Wisconsin's beaten Purdue every single year since 2003. That's why. That's why I went Wisconsin as well. But I think Rutgers is improved. Their defense is improved. Their offense, though, is still at times pretty bad. I mean, the running game is solid. They've gotten some success on the ground, but Gavin Wimsatt in most games only throws for like 150 to 175 yards. It's at Camp Randall, and Wisconsin's only loss is to Washington State on the road, who's looked pretty good. I'm going to go with Wisconsin to win 21-17.
Yeah, 14 points is too much in this one, I feel like. But I do think that the Badgers will win at Camp Randall. I'm going to go 24-17 Badgers. But
yeah, it's a tough game, as Austin says. Don't know to trust, but I think I trust Wisconsin more, man.
Mm-hmm. Good night, Casey. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate everybody for being here in the chat tonight.
Mm-hmm. Here we go. William and Mary, Virginia.
And it don't even have a spread. Come on.
FBS games usually don't have spreads.
Man. I don't know how good William and Mary is. I mean, they're 4-1, but like, how good are they? I mean,
do they still have Cam Newton's cousin at quarterback?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I think they lost to Elon last week, though, so maybe.
I guess I'll go Virginia by 3. I really don't know. They'll win their first game.
Well, I don't see him on the roster. I don't think he's there.
I just don't know anything about William and Mary. And I mean, Virginia's been awful. They've lost every game, but they'll win. They'll go. I'll give them.
Yeah, I'll go Who's by 3. Ooh,
CW. Good game, man. Marshall's good. Like, it was so funny last year. Everybody was like, Notre Dame lost to Marshall and Stanford. I'm like, yeah, and Stanford's the worst loss.
Yeah,
like, Marshall's decent. Like, they're legitimately a decent team. Notre Dame shouldn't have lost, obviously, but Marshall was the better loss. Marshall's pretty good, and they're still decent. On track to make a bowl. This is tough, man. I mean, NC State, hey, traveling fools.
What's up, Kia?
Yeah, I feel like NC State's offense is just horrible, but with Morris potentially coming in there and he shows some flashes, it's at home and they're still a Power 5 team. I'll go NC State by 3 again, like with Virginia. I'll say 24-21.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with the Herd, man. I don't know. I could regret this, but I'll go 28-24 Marshall.
I haven't watched the Marshall game this season, so I mean I know that they've been winning and they've been playing pretty well, but I'll just give NC State the benefit of the doubt. That UTSA Temple game right there, UTSA is way worse than they were last year. They still have Frank Harris, but no Zachary Franklin. Temple's got Kurt Warner's son, EJ Warner at quarterback, which is interesting.
I pick EJ. Come on, EJ.
But I think that UTSA, I think they'll win by 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think anyone really goes to Temple's games, sadly. Yeah, I'll go Temple 34-14. Why is this game on the Pac-12 network?
This is a travesty right here. I mean, think about it. You've got on ABC Virginia Tech and Florida State. But this game's on the Pac. What in the world? Like,
What are we
I don't know.
doing?
It's insane.
I have to find a stream on it. Hopefully someone streams it on YouTube and I'll share it out with everyone.
Yeah,
But
this game right here is going to be
hopefully
good.
someone sacrifices their YouTube video for our channel for our enjoyment.
Yeah, it's always like, hey, someone's doing the this ultimate sacrifice for a big game or like something that they stream and they get axed. But yeah, Washington State at UCLA, this is legitimately one of the best games of the day, I think. I mean, you've got a team riding high off a bye after a big win over Oregon State, and then you got UCLA, a team that they beat Coastal by a decent amount. They didn't really blow them out, but they got it done. They suffered their first loss of the season in conference play. And I feel like, UCLA really let a lot of people down in that Utah game because Utah, it was at Rice-Eccles, but there was absolutely no offense from UCLA. Dante Moore, I know it was his first massive road test of his life in college football, but still, that was a horrible offensive showing. And now you're back at home. But the problem is everyone always documents how UCLA never fills up their home stadium, kind of like Miami doesn't. But Washington State, I don't feel like a lot of their fans are going to really travel.
This is their last game at the Rose Bowl, though, man.
Yeah, they need to. They should. But like USC fills it up. But will Washington State fans really make a difference? Will a lot of them travel to this game, like you said, because it's their last trip and all that? Will they? They should. Well, I don't know. Cam Ward, no picks, just like Hartman. He's been great. And UCLA, I mean, it's at home, and Dante Moore is really talented, but I'm going to go with Washington State to win 31-24. I think they're going to stay undefeated.
I'll go Washington State 31, UCLA 10. Their offenses, I don't trust their offenses.
That makes sense. I mean, I don't blame you. I really don't.
Howard and Northwestern.
Northwestern's gonna win. They beat Minnesota, and I mean they're showing signs of life. Ben Bryant hasn't been awful, so I think they'll win by 17.
Can Texas A&M do it again at home without Connor Wegman? Can Max Johnson do it, or will the Tide keep rolling in their new momentum?
Even though Texas A&M is not ranked, this is a dangerous game for Alabama. And even though Texas A&M is not ranked, the ratings for this game are going to be insane. There is going to be a lot of people watching this game because people know what has happened the last 2 years, that Alabama has faced Texas A&M. 2 years ago, they lost on a field goal at the end in Kyle Field. Last year, A&M was a 2-point conversion away from beating Alabama at home. So A&M always gives Alabama their best crack. Problem, though, for Texas A&M, Connor Wegman is hurt, and he's not available. Max Johnson, though, is in, and he was solid at LSU. He is a bit turnover prone, but he is a capable quarterback. And Alabama still has a lot of question marks. Their defense look good. And is probably a big reason why, a lot more people are having faith in them, as well as the improved play calling for Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe, they're doing more of the option. They're having to run the football more, and they're not having to put the ball in harm's way as much. So all around, since that Texas loss, Alabama, and after the debacle at South Florida, and they put Milroe back in, Alabama has looked better on offense, even though Milroe is not ripping up the road with the stats. They just look better, though, on offense. The run game's even doing better. The O-line's blocking better. Alabama just looks better. But A&M is still a good team with a lot of talent. They're 4-1 with their only loss at Miami, who's been legitimately a good team this year. And, again, with Max Johnson at quarterback, I do trust his ability to lead this A&M team to some success in this game and some offensive touchdowns. And it's at Kyle Field. But I will say that the thing that's keeping me from picking Texas A&M is the fact when Alabama played at Texas A&M 2 years ago, it was at night. And I understand it's at night versus during the day is a dumb argument because it's still going to be an insane road environment. It's going to be absolutely insane. Kyle Field, the crowd, the 12th man, they're going to be loud just like they were 2 years ago. But there's something to me, though, when it's at night, it does add just a little bit, even if that is not actually a factor. If people don't legitimately think that's a factor. I think Alabama's still the better team. They could lose this game for sure, but I'm going to go with Alabama to beat Texas A&M 31-28.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, man. I think Bobby Petrino's play calling will be the difference, and I'm going to go with Texas A&M to win 31-24. I don't trust Jalen Milroe, man. I mean, they're both turnover prone, but I think Max Johnson's the more veteran quarterback, and I think he'll make less mistakes. And I
mean, you
think
could be right. I definitely can see A&M winning, and I flip-flop a lot on this game. I thought that in my mind A&M is going to do it again just like they did 2 years ago at times. But I think that Alabama, they're not going to want to throw away the season. You know, they have one loss. They have a lot to play for. And I know A&M does as well. But I just think that Alabama's going to pull out. Could be completely wrong. It's going to be a great game. Could go either way. I can definitely see A&M winning. Like Jackson said, College Station has me nervous as a Bama fan. 100% agree. I mean, like I said, I watched the game 2 years ago, and there was a lot of heartbreak when that field goal went in for Bama fans. And it could happen again, but I think Alabama's going to win.
Mm-hmm. Can Carolina keep it going, or will they slip, or will they look ahead to the game against Miami?
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, the look ahead to Miami and North Carolina has had a propensity in the past to drop games like this. Syracuse coming off a loss that they didn't look that good in, even at home. They're on the road now. Syracuse is capable of pulling this off, and North Carolina at times has looked shaky, like in the App State game and even at Pitt for a little bit of that game. But Drake May, he's better than the 5 touchdowns, 4 picks he's put up. I feel like he's going to have a bounce back game here off a bye. They've talked about some things, to try to get, that ratio of touchdown to interception to go up, in the touchdown side, Drake May to start throwing for 300 plus yards again, like he was last year. They've got a good run game, and North Carolina's defense is improved, even though it's still shaky at times. I still think it's improved from last year. Classic North Carolina they would drop this game and blow it before the Miami showdown. But I think North Carolina is going to win. They've won all their other games. They survived a scare against App State. They've had a bye to work things out and get Drake May really rolling. I'm going to go with North Carolina to beat Syracuse 35-24.
Yeah, I mean, I think since they're coming off a bye, I think that they'll be fine in this one. I would be a little more concerned if this was just right after the App State game. But this is coming off a bye, so I do think that Carolina will win this game. I'll go 38-17. I don't know, man. Syracuse, after one loss, man, it just seems like they keep losing and losing.
Yeah, I agree. Syracuse really struggled against Clemson last week. And last year when they lost their first game, they went in a free fall. That could happen again.
Mm-hmm. Purdue and Iowa.
Yeah, Peacock has 2 games. Peacock has 2 games this week that I'm not going to be able to see. And obviously a lot of people's going to be like, well, why would you want to watch this game? It's going to be no offense. But still, there's a shot Purdue can put up some points because of the fact that they do have offensive capabilities. And Iowa's defense is good, but it seems like they can give up a play or two more than they usually do. But it's in Iowa City. And K. McNamara being out for basically the rest of the season, that is a tough loss. But I still question how much of a difference it's going to make. Like I said in the K. McNamara video I did earlier, I feel like that Iowa, their offensive scheme and their play calling doesn't help anybody. So since it doesn't really help any quarterback, with Deacon Hill in the game, who basically put up the exact same stats that McNamara has put up in games, it's not like their offense or defense is really going to be better. If I was going to win this game, it's not going to be because McNamara is in or Deacon Hill. It's going to be because they do enough on offense and their defense shuts Purdue down. If their defense shuts Purdue down, Iowa will win this game. I think that they will. Purdue's been a bit shaky all around in games. They did do good against Illinois last week, but Illinois is really struggling. I'll go with Iowa to beat Purdue 21-17.
Wait, can you hear me, Jeffrey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is weird. Your face is going in like slow motion. I don't know what's going on.
It's probably my internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Everything's fine for me.
Okay. Yeah, I think that Iowa's defense is just too good. I think Iowa will win this game. I'll go 17-6.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Iowa's defense will.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't like to, undersell K McNamara because I really think he's a solid quarterback. But I just feel like Iowa's one of the only teams where your starting quarterback goes down and just isn't the end of the world because they just don't play to their quarterback's strength anyway. So having McNamara, a player that has talent, a quarterback that's capable, and you're putting up offensive stats like that, him being out and having Deacon Hill, like I said, the stats are going to be similar anyways. It's going to be about 140 yards, touchdown pick anyway. It's like with McNamara. So, I mean, McNamara was literally averaging like 100 yards a game, a little over 100 yards a game. That's all that they were mustering with him. And I was 4-1, make it 5-1 without K McNamara. I just think that their defense is going to be enough and their offense is going to be the same old, same old.
Mm-hmm. Wake and Clemson. I think we can skip over this one. I don't know, man.
This was Wake from a couple years ago with Hartman and A.T. Perry, maybe, but Clemson is better than Wake. Wake lost to Georgia Tech, who just lost a atrocious game in their own right to Bowling Green. I'm going to go with Clemson to win 35-17.
Yeah, Clemson big in this one.
Texas State, I got by 3.
Yeah, that'll be a good game. Miami of Ohio. That might be a quality win for Miami.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Miami to win by 7. I mean, I know Bowling Green just won, but Miami, Ohio has a decent win in their own right over Cincinnati. It's at home. Vandy, Florida. It's at home. It's the swamp. I know. Yeah. I'm really mad at Florida right now for their poor performance when I picked them to win at Kentucky, but they're at home this time. They're going to win. Florida should win 31-14.
Man, if Florida loses this game, Billy Napier should be fired, man.
It probably would happen too. Like, I know a lot of teams, like, they wouldn't, I guess you would say overreact to a game like that, but the way Vandy's playing and Florida falls to 3-3 with a loss like that at home, yeah, it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Fox has this game. That's interesting. UCF, Kansas.
Kansas should cover the 2 even with Jason Bean, I feel like.
Yeah, this is another game that, like, on the time slot at 4 o'clock, you could have had the Washington State UCLA game. Either the ABC window or the Fox window, either or. It's like, I don't understand why that game's not in either slot. Like, Washington State UCLA is a better game than Virginia Tech and Florida State, and it's bigger teams. It's a bigger matchup than this game. Not that these two teams are bad. It's just it's not a headliner type of game. Kansas losing to Texas last week without Jalen Daniels. They got beat fairly easily. UCF with that horrible fourth quarter performance against Baylor. One of the worst fourth quarter performances of any team ever in history of college football, probably. That was that bad. Yeah. Giving up a 28-point lead. It's at Kansas, but I feel like Jalen Daniels has to play, though. Like, if Jason Bean's playing, I still think Kansas can win, and it's at home, and their crowds have been getting much better. But I'm not as confident in a Kansas win if Jalen Daniels isn't in. And I don't know if he's playing. You haven't gotten an update either, I'm sure.
No, I don't know.
So we don't know. I'll just go with he's playing, and I'll go with Kansas by 10 to win 35-24 by 11.
Yeah, I think UCF will score some points, but I think Kansas will just score more. I'll go 38-27.
Mm-hmm. South Florida favored on the road. I'll go them by 3, like the spread.
Mhm.
Rice over UConn.
All right, can Colorado get their first Pac-12 win? They're going to the desert in
They're
Arizona.
only favored by 4. That is not a big spread at all. And I feel like that USC game at Arizona State is influencing things with the spread because Arizona State, the way that they quote unquote hung with USC, despite again USC's defense just being abysmal at times, is why Arizona State was able to score when Arizona State hasn't really been able to score against other teams. I mean, Fresno State blanked them, if I recall. I mean, you're the one that mentioned that. Arizona State got blanked by Fresno. Yeah, they're putting up yards and yards of offense on USC. It's insane. But this game right here, I don't trust Colorado. I still think that they have a lot of holes on their team. Just a lot of holes, a lot more holes than a lot of people, I think thought that they had after they beat TCU and Nebraska and Colorado State. I just think that a lot of people didn't really think, like they don't have a lot of depth and there's just holes everywhere on the roster. But I'll go with Colorado to win by 7. I will give primetime some love, back the primetime train. They'll get back on track a little bit, and I'll just pick them 28-21. I'm not confident, though, because of the fact their defense is pretty rough, but I think they'll win.
Yeah, I think they'll put up the points in this one. I'm going to go 42-14 Colorado. I just don't think Arizona State is very good.
No. Kentucky, Georgia. Whew. Yeah, this game right here, I know the real MVP and a lot of other Kentucky fans, they think they have a shot to win. And it's possible. I'm not saying that they could not win. Georgia has not been, they don't want like they're impenetrable, like they can't win. Like they have this, big wall where, of players and depth that you just can't win. You can't break it down. There's no way you have a shot. Georgia, they look beatable. And I know that last year they had the Missouri game, but then most of the other games they dominated. I understand that. But this year they've had 2 performances where they haven't been dominant. South Carolina and the Auburn game on the road. They won both, to their credit. If this game was at Kentucky, it'd be interesting. But it's between the hedges. It's at home. Athens. It's going to be a loud crowd, like always. Georgia is a fantastic fan base, especially since the resurgence in the last 5 years with Kirby Smart. They've got an insane fan base. I think Kentucky's going to try, and I think they're going to give it all that they have. But Ray Davis is not going to put up the yards that he put up against Florida in this game. I mean, it took 280 yards from him for Kentucky to score 33. How many points are they going to need to win this game? Probably at least high 20s, low 30s. Probably. And Leary, what if he just gets rattled? Like, that's the key. What if he throws a couple picks? Because he is turnover prone. He's been turnover prone at Kentucky. And it wasn't exposing his forward because they just run it all over the place. I just don't feel like Georgia's going to allow Kentucky to run the ball enough. I think that Kentucky's going to try, but Georgia's going to win this game 35-21.
Kentucky's defense will have to win this game for them.
Yeah, they have to shut down Brock Bowers, and I don't know if they can do that either.
Mm-hmm. But if they can get enough pressure on Carson back, that's what they need to do. They need to pressure Carson back and make him make mistakes. I think that's their key to victory. Can they do it? I think they'll do it a bit, but I don't think they'll do it enough. I'm going to go Georgia 31, Kentucky 21.
Yeah, I think it'll be a decent game. I don't think Georgia's going to run away with it, but like you said, it's just too much talent, I feel like, for Georgia and Kentucky. Like I said, their run game is a big reason why they had success against Florida, some of their other opponents. They're not going to do that against Georgia. They're just not going to run the football as well, and I think it's just going to not be enough offense all around. Leary might make a couple mistakes. Georgia should win. But if Georgia has another scare, I mean, we're going to legitimately have to look at Georgia and be like, are they actually, the best team, or can they beat, Tennessee, some of the other tough games they're going to have, like late in the season, SEC championship game? It's going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm. The Little Brown Jug, Michigan going to Minnesota.
That's a cool rivalry game name. The Little Brown Jug right there. I like some of the classic old rivalry names that you've had for like 100 years. They're really cool. They really add to games like this. But Minnesota just doesn't look good this year. I mean, they struggle. Like, when they beat Nebraska 13-10, it was like, all right, Minnesota's pulling an Iowa. Their defense saves the day, and they're beating a team that Nebraska always loses by one score. But now that we're seeing Nebraska just get destroyed by everybody, that doesn't look good for Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
They struggled last week against an inferior opponent. They lost to Northwestern, which is insane. Like, I know they lost to Bowling Green that year, and they went like 8-4, but that was one game. Minnesota's been playing rough in several games. They've struggled in several games. So I'm not confident in Minnesota. It's at home. The crowd should be pretty good. It's on NBC, national game. And I think Michigan's going to win 38-17.
Yeah, I don't trust Minnesota's offense in this one. I'm going to go 34-3 Wolverines. Their offense just hasn't impressed me enough for them.
Yeah, I think Calic Manis has struggled just like Tanner Morgan, and they're just not getting really anything going, and they don't have Mo Ibrahim anymore on the ground. Just everything about their offense is struggle. Granted, Taylor is 532, 4 touchdowns, but he's not going to put up a lot against Michigan.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Arkansas and Ole Miss. Can Arkansas finally get it going this season?
This could be a letdown game for Ole Miss because you just have the performance that you had against LSU, and you could be riding high. But yeah, go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm. Like, this game, I remember 2 years ago. This was a crazy game back when Arkansas was good and Ole Miss still had Matt Corral. But I don't think this game will be as close. I'm going to go 42-21 Ole Miss. I think their offense has another good game.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a good game a couple years ago. Arkansas, I just missed that vibe from them. Like Baylor and Arkansas, the two teams like a couple years ago, they were just really, really good. Now they're just struggling. But, I mean, like I said, it could be a letdown game for Ole Miss because you get that big win and, you could just kind of overlook Arkansas like, oh, they're 2-3. They're not that good. We should be able to easily win. It could happen, but it's at home. It's at night. The crowd should be good. Jackson Dart has been playing better lately outside of that Alabama game. Judkins is solid on the ground. I think they'll win. Arkansas just doesn't really impress me on defense that much, and their offense with Jefferson just doesn't look as good as it did before. It's not that Jefferson is necessarily playing bad. I don't know. They just don't look that good. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss to win 31-21.
Mm-hmm. And Georgia Tech and Miami. Will Miami look ahead for Carolina?
Yeah. I mean, it could happen in theory. And, I mean, Haynes King's putting up a bunch of stats, but Georgia Tech's defense is horrible. And it's at home. Miami, Tyler Van Dyke's probably going to throw for like 450 in this one. Miami, I got 38-17.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I was hopeful for Georgia Tech. I wanted to see them make a bowl this year.
The way they played against Louisville, I thought that they actually were pretty good. I mean, they looked pretty good. And then they beat Wake, and it's like, wow. I mean, but yeah, they're just not a good defensive team. They have too many flaws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Miami's going to win this one 31-28. I think it'll be close.
Never know. Mountain West getting love on Fox. 8 o'clock. Fresno State at Wyoming. I can't wait for this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this might be the game of the week, man.
You never know. I mean, a lot of people are high on the Cowboys. They had the big win over Texas Tech. Texas Tech has been struggling. They did get beat by Texas, but Texas is really good. And, unless maybe they're not back like you said earlier and they get destroyed against Oklahoma or whatever. But we'll see. But outside of that Texas loss, Wyoming's look good. But Fresno State, they blanked Arizona State, which I would say is not that impressive. But, hey, Arizona State scored on USC, which everyone does. But Fresno State has shown capabilities on defense, to be a really solid, for a group of 5 team, a really solid defense. And Mikey Keene, their quarterback, transferred from UCF. He played for UCF. He's capable. He's shown at UCF that he can be a solid quarterback, and he's showing here at Fresno State that he can be a solid quarterback. Jeff Tevert has that program rolling. And I think that even though this game's on the road, that's a tough environment. Wyoming, it's going to be a tough environment. The altitude, it's not an easy place to play. And Fresno State, I wouldn't even say it's a trap game because Wyoming's too good for it to be a trap game. This is just a hard game for Fresno State. Having to go on the road, you're ranked, you're feeling good about yourself, you're blowing out all these bad teams. This game could catch up to them. They could possibly lose. But I'm going to go with Fresno State to beat Wyoming 31-28. It's going to be a great game. I can't wait for it. And I can see Wyoming pulling it off because it's a tough place to play in Laramie. But I'm going to go with Fresno State.
I think Laramie's going to be tough. I think Laramie will be just a little too tough for Mikey Keene, Jeff Tedford. I'm going to go with the Cowboys to win a close one. I'm going to go 28-24 Cowboys. I think that they'll pull it off. But hey, man, Fresno's looked good, so they could definitely win. Definitely could go either way.
And again, I'm glad this game's on Fox. It deserves it. It's a good game. Very good game. No, that doesn't have any CFP implications, obviously, but it don't matter. It's just going to be a good football game. It could go either way.
All right, this is a Big 12 grudge match between two teams that desperately got wins.
Look at that
Texas
spread. Even.
Tech, Baylor, even money.
Yeah, it is about an even match. I mean, Baylor's been awful. But, I mean, they did show fight against Utah, even though Utah is struggling without Cam Rising. And, I mean, Waco's a tough place, to go and play at. I think that their fans, even though they're 2-3, should still be pretty enthusiastic, trying to help their team out. I don't know if it'll be sold out or not, but I think that it will be a tough crowd. Texas Tech, I mean, if they didn't play the way they did against Houston, which Houston might be pretty bad, though. I mean, they did lose to Rice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Texas Tech, I mean, they look good in that game. I don't know. This is a coin flip. It's why it's even. I'm going to go with Tech by 3. I'll go Tech 31-28.
I was going to go Tech by 3. Dang
I mean, I know Baylor had the remarkable comeback against UCF. That was impressive. I mean, completely out of the blue, out of left field. And again, it's at home, but I think Tech will win. I mean, I just don't trust either of these teams. Basically, the Big 12 at the bottom is full of a bunch of teams that you just don't trust at all. Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, Houston, even possibly Cincinnati. It's just a bunch of teams. You just throw them in a blender and you find out some weird result once it's, crushed up. You just don't even know. Like, all these teams are just interesting. They don't always play the way you think, and you think they're horrible, and then they come back and surprise you. So I guess since Baylor really surprised us last week, I guess Tech will do it.
Yeah, I mean, Baylor, every time I pick Baylor, it seems like they lose. So I'm just going to pick against them.
Yeah, same for me. They do usually lose when I pick them. I picked against them this past time with UCF, and they come back out of nowhere. So, I mean, it could just be whenever you pick or don't pick, and they do the opposite. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Tech by 3.
TCU and Iowa State.
On FS2.
Like, FS2.
No one has FS2. Like, I think I do, but, like, most people don't have FS2. I think TCU's better. I know they blew it against West Virginia last week. And I know that Iowa State, their quarterback has been not too bad. He's actually been putting up decent stats in some games. Rocco Morris, I don't know. I feel like Chandler Morris, though, even though he's a bit turnover prone, he's been getting it together the last couple of weeks and hasn't been making as many mistakes. I just think TCU's better. I'm going to go with Horned Frogs to beat Cyclones 28-21.
Yeah, I think this will be a defensive grudge match because I don't trust TCU's offense, and Iowa State had a decent defense. So I'll go 17-14 Frogs.
Mm-hmm. I'll go Utah State by 3, Boise by 10.
We have the Pac-12 after dark.
Yeah, that's the game I was looking for right there when I was saying Cal has a tough opponent coming up next. Oregon State. That's who they play. And if they were 4-1 right now, if they beat Auburn, that spread would be a bit lower. It would not be Oregon State 9.5. I know USC's the brand. USC, that's why that game's on ESPN. But this has the potential to be the better game right here because Oregon State is a good team. And yes, they beat Utah at home. But DJ Uiagalelei struggled in the game. And I know that Cal is nothing special as a home environment. It's not like one of the best environments in the sport or anything like that. But it's at night. And I think that some Cal fans are going to have some hope here because they're not completely awful. They're 3-2. And this will be a huge win for Wilcox if he could get it. You know, it really helped his hot seat out. But I just don't see it happening. I think that they just have too many holes. Their defense isn't horrible or anything. And DJ, again, been struggling a bit. So that's why I think it could be close because of that reason. But I just don't think that Cal's offense is anything special still, even Jay Knott. You know, he's a good player, but it's one guy. I just feel like Oregon State's going to be able to shut him down. I think Oregon State's going to win on the road 24-17.
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to blow them out. I think it's going to be close.
Yeah, I think the Beavers' defense is just too good. I'm going to go 24-10.
Mm-hmm.
But can we pay respects for Cal here? Look at the schedule. Oregon State at Utah, USC at Oregon, Washington State, Stanford. They'll probably win. Then at UCLA.
Yeah, they needed that Auburn game if they had any shot of making a bowl. Yeah, they needed that Auburn game. They're not making a bowl. It's the dream is dead for Wilcox. They're not making a bowl game. Unbelievable. It's like all the hard teams roll up in one, back to back to back to back to back. Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arizona USC though. I think that game, like I said, even though it's on ESPN because it's USC and the Trojans defense is struggling, and Arizona did put up some points last week, but USC their offense is gonna be too much. Caleb Williams is gonna put up a ton of yards, a ton of touchdowns, and I think USC is gonna win 51-24.
I do like Jaden DeLore at Arizona. So I do think USC's defense will struggle in this game. I do not think it'll be pretty once again. So I'm going to go USC 49, Arizona 42.
Another one-score game. Will that knock USC out of the top 10? Like, they just keep dropping. Like, they keep winning, but they keep dropping. It's insane. Like, USC was at, 6. Now they're at number 9 because they struggled at Arizona State and at Colorado. It's insane. But, yeah, their defense, I mean, I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt because they've had some bad defensive performances. Maybe they'll do a bit better this week. It's at home. But, yeah, I'm with you, though. Their defense is really struggling. I could see Arizona scoring that much, but I don't know. Arizona, they're a decent team, but it's on the road. Yeah, I think USC is going to win by more than that. But you could be right. It could be another one-score game. That's really going to put the emergency lights on for USC fans if they have another game that's really close against the bottom tier of the Pac-12 because of their defense. How are they going to beat the good teams if they're barely beating the bad teams? Like, their offense, we know your offense is the same, but your defense has to stop the bad teams. They're bad. They're supposed to lose by a lot. That's why you're favored by 20-something points every week, and you're only winning by 7 or 14. Defense has to be better.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick look at the polls. Here we go. As we could see, man, LSU, I just don't think LSU should still be in the top 25. Like, yes, they probably are one of the best 25 teams in the country. But Maryland, I don't know, man.
It's because they started the season 6 and they have losses to Ole Miss, who's ranked at number 16, and Florida State, who's number 5. That's the only reason. And it's LSU brand. If it wasn't for that reason, like if they started the season at 15, they'd be out of the poll. It's because they were 6th. Do you think Louisville should be 25th or Maryland? Because that, to me, I think
Maryland's been more impressive.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I don't know. I feel like Tennessee should be out of the top 25 because of how bad their loss to Florida looks now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, they haven't really dominated anyone else. I mean, they've been all right, but yeah, I mean, there's an argument for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
it's
how they
crazy. Go ahead,
Mhm.
sorry.
I like how they only dropped Duke 2 points because it was such a close game.
Yeah, 100%. I think when I made my AP video this week, I said that I was glad they didn't drop Duke far because of the fact that they, played a really good game. But if they don't get Riley Leonard back soon, though, they could drop out. Hopefully that does not occur. But what's crazy, though, is look at the top 10. You got all those teams from the Big Ten and going to be the new Big Ten in it. Look at that. Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Washington, Oregon, and USC in the top 10.
That's
And they're all going to
impressive.
be in the Big Ten next year. Like, I know that all these teams aren't going to stay in the top 10, but that's crazy right there. 6 of the
Mhm.
top 10 teams are going to be in the Big Ten next year. That's
Mhm.
insane.
Yeah. See, it'll be interesting to see how Tom Allen will do against that schedule.
Yeah, hopefully he's still at Indiana then. It's not looking good. He fired Walt Bell. He knows the writing's on the wall. He needs wins badly. So hopefully Indiana can turn it around.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
that's crazy though with the Pac-12 / Big Ten teams, man, all being in the top 10. That's wild.
yeah, Washington State might be getting there if they win again against UCLA.
Very well possible, especially, I mean, because think about it. If you had, and you obviously don't want this to happen, Will, but what if Notre
Yeah.
Dame, Alabama, and Oklahoma lose? Yeah, Washington State wins, they could be 10. It's very well possible. But I don't think that's going to occur because I picked Notre Dame and Alabama, but we'll see.
All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed our show. We got Jackson still here. I don't know who else is still here, but thank you so much for staying with us. And yeah, another fun show, Jeffrey. I hope your camera gets fixed a little bit. It's still acting a little wonky, but I think everyone still enjoys the show.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I hope it's not too bad. When I rewatch it, it might be really bad, and I can't tell from my end. But I appreciate everyone for watching tonight. Thanks for having me on, Will. It was a blast. Can't wait to do it next week if we are able to back over on my channel. But it was a lot of fun tonight doing the show, talking about the games last week and the good games that are coming up this week as well. Always great games, and sometimes games you don't even think are going to end up being that good end up being better than we think on the road. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
For sure, for sure. All right. Well, take care, everyone. And yeah, enjoy some great college football.